Chapter 159. Li Baxian suddenly realized that even though his little junior brother was only a fifth-order realm cultivator and had always been protected, his heart was still as clear as a mirror. Letting out a long sigh, he looked at Wei Yang and asked softly, "Can you switch?" His question was baffling, but Wei Yang shook her head. "She's asleep?" "Then we can't rely on the strength of outsiders," Li Baxian muttered. Since the direction of the situation was already decided, the details needed to be discussed. He raised his hand and wiped his face full of worry. "My little junior brother is a kind person and doesn't want anyone to die for him. If Myriad Demon Ridge thinks his previous proposal is feasible, then let's discuss the details together." If such a battle was to be carried out, there would definitely be many things to discuss. It wasn't something that could be pushed forward by Lu Yez, who wants to kill me. "Come and fight me." Naturally, the discussion would be carried out by the masters of both sides. Even if Lu Yi was the cause of this matter and the center of the battle, he wasn't qualified to participate. After all, his cultivation was too low and he didn't have much experience. However, with Li Baxian taking charge of this matter, there was no need to worry that the results of the discussion would be detrimental to him. Lu Yi had already experienced just how protective his senior brothers and senior sisters of the Blue Blood sect were. This was especially true of his eldest senior sister. He didn't know what kind of cultivation base she had possessed, but she had stubbornly endured the punishment of heaven's fate and charged into the spirit stream battlefield to guard him. Saying so, Li Baxian called out to a sword cultivator in the crowd. The sword cultivator immediately rushed over and cupped his fists. "Martial Uncle Li." Although they looked about the same age, Li Baxian's seniority was actually higher. It could be said that 99% of the cultivators on the spirit stream battlefield were younger than him. This couldn't be helped. He didn't want to stay on the spirit stream battlefield forever. However, his spirit aperture had been broken and he couldn't break through, so he was in despair. This sword cultivator came from the North Profound Sword Sect and was also a master on the spirit stream list. "Protect my little junior brother," Li Baxian ordered. The sword cultivator immediately replied, "Martial Uncle, don't worry." Although Wei Yang had always been protecting Lu Yi, Wei Yang's current state was not right. With the divine lightning surrounding her, as long as one or two more people died in his hands, she would definitely be annihilated by the divine lightning. There was the Sacred Flame sect in the Myriad Devil Ridge. Those people had their minds burned by their own sacred flame. They were not normal people. It was hard to guarantee that they would not take risks. This swordsman was a form of insurance. Li Baxian flew out in a flash, along with several other experts from the Spirit Stream list. Several people from the Myriad Devil Ridge also flew out. More than 10 experts from the Spirit Stream list gathered to discuss the details of the upcoming battle. It didn't take long for them to quarrel until their faces and necks were red, especially Li Baxian. His spiritual energy fluctuated violently as sword chi wreaked havoc around his body. Lu Yi trembled with fear. They won't fight, right? If they did, there would be no room for negotiation. Wei Yang glanced at him and comforted him. "They won't fight. They're just putting on a show." Lu Yi watched for a while and realized that the situation was getting more and more intense. However, no one made a move. He immediately understood that Wei Yang was right. He raised his hand and patted the shoulder of the swordsman standing in front of him. "Thank you, senior brother." This swordsman was the azure-robed man who had blocked a powerful enemy for him. "Martial Uncle Li's matter is our North Profound Sword Sect's matter. Young Martial Uncle, there's no need for you to be so polite," the swordsman replied indifferently. Did he just become Li Baxian's young martial uncle? Li thought about his own age. Seniority was really a strange thing. Wei Yang squatted down and teased Hoopa. Hoopa raised his head slightly and squinted his eyes. He looked very comfortable with his chin being scratched. Strangely enough, the dark purple lightning on Wei Yang's body looked extremely violent, but no one touched it. Lu Yi had learned from the others that this thing was called soul-extinguishing lightning. It seemed to be related to eldest senior sister forcing her way into the spirit stream battlefield to kill people. The more people she killed, the greater the damage it would cause to her. But now, it seemed that eldest senior sister was completely fine. She allowed the dark purple lightning to jump around her body. Lu Yi didn't know if she was really fine or just faking it. All the sect managers of the Myriad Devil Ridge, get over here. Li Baxian's voice suddenly came from not far away. After a moment of hesitation, several figures rushed over. Lu Yi watched coldly from the sidelines and discovered that there were at least 40 people who had gone over. In other words, there were so many sects gathered here. A moment later, there was a low murmur. It seemed to be Li Baxian's voice. Lu Yi didn't hear it clearly, but following the murmur, a golden whirlpool suddenly appeared in the sky. From the golden whirlpool, a milky white pillar of light shot towards Li Baxian. Before the milky white pillar of light completely landed, Li Baxian raised his hand and grabbed at it. Surprisingly, his hand was holding an ancient beast skin. The pillar of light disappeared, and so did the golden whirlpool. What was that? Lu Yi was curious. This was the first time he had seen something like this. A heavenly secret contract. Wei Yang explained, this kind of contract requires many people to sign together. It's too troublesome to swear a heavenly secret oath one by one, so you can invite a heavenly secret contract, but you'll need to spend some merit points. Lu Yi was surprised. Heavenly secret was a mysterious existence in this world. It was high and mighty, monitoring all living things. If one spent merit points, they could even communicate with heavenly secret. Li Baxian held the heavenly secret contract and carefully inspected it. Then, he bit his finger and pressed a blood mark on it. With him as the leader, many cultivators followed suit. Soon, there were dozens of blood marks on the heavenly secret contract. Li Baxian gloomily walked back with the heavenly secret contract. A moment later, the experts of both sides began to clear the area. Under the restrictions of these experts, the bustling central area of the Golden Light Summit was cleared. Even the corpses of those who had died in battle were taken away. The two sides each occupied one side, and in the central area, there was a temporary stage that covered an area of 200 feet. This was the battlefield where Lu Yi and the Myriad Devil Ridge cultivators would fight. At this moment, Lu Yi and Wei Yang were looking at the various clauses of the heavenly secret contract. These were the details drawn up by the masters of both sides and witnessed by heavenly secret. No one could violate them. There were more than 30 clauses in total. They were extremely comprehensive and completely eliminated the possibility of opportunism. Among these clauses, the highest cultivation of the Myriad Devil Ridge cultivators who would fight Lu Yi was a 6th order cultivator who cultivated an Earth-grade secret art. The reason why this was specifically noted was naturally because a 6th order heaven-grade secret art and an Earth-grade secret art were two completely different existences. The former had opened 180 apertures while the latter had only opened 81. This was the advantage of having someone backing him. Lu Yi had not considered this before, but Li Baxian was different. In addition, he was not allowed to rely on any external forces. There were no restrictions on spirit artifacts he had refined, and he was not allowed to use spirit talismans in battle. Under the constraints of these clauses, if one wanted to win, they would have to kill Lu Yi in a head-on battle. Many of the clauses were not very friendly to Lu Yi, but there were some that were beneficial to him. For example, in each battle, Lu Yi had the right to choose to rest for an incense stick worth of time, and this was the result of Li Baxian's efforts. For a cultivator, an incense stick worth of time was too short, but Myriad Devil Ridge refused to agree to a longer period of time, so Li Baxian was helpless. However, he managed to win another clause that was even more beneficial to Lu Yi. That was, this battle would be limited to 3 days. After 3 days, if Lu Yi was still alive, Myriad Devil Ridge would have to withdraw. Alternatively, Lu Yi would have to kill all the cultivators from his sect who had left their names on the heavenly secret contract. Lu Yi read these clauses one by one and committed them to memory. Wei Yang looked at him worriedly. "Little junior brother, you don't have to do this. If your 4th senior brother and I go all out to protect you, we may have a chance to send you away." Even though Li Baxian had tried his best, it was almost impossible for a 5th order cultivator to survive 3 days under the continuous attacks of the enemy. Several dozen Myriad Devil Ridge sects, if each of them sent a 5th or 6th order cultivator, would be able to exhaust Lu Yi to death. Hearing Wei Yang's words, Lu Yi shook his head. Everyone has done enough for me. So many people have already died, I can't always hide behind others. Eldest senior sister and fourth senior brother are willing to risk their lives to protect me, but as your little junior brother, I can't accept it with a clear conscience. This battle started because of me, so I should be the one to end it. Wei Yang's mood was stifled. After waiting for so many years, she had finally met her little junior brother. There was hope for the sect's inheritance, but they were now embroiled in a game between two great factions. In such a violent situation, even she, a true Lake Realm cultivator who had forced her way into the Spirit Stream battlefield, would find it difficult to accomplish anything, let alone her little junior brother who was only a fifth order. She only hated the unfairness of the heavens, and hated that her cultivation was not enough. Eldest senior sister. Li Baxian suddenly shouted. Wei Yang's somewhat chaotic aura slowly calmed down, and her eyes, which had already spread out, refocused. I won't die. Lu Ye's expression was calm. I still want to see what the Blue Blood sect looks like. I have no home in this world, no relatives. Since the sect master accepted me, the Blue Blood sect is my home, and you and fourth senior brother are my family. So, I won't die. Lu Yi stepped forward, step by step, to the center of the battlefield, where a simple ring had been arranged by the masters of both camps. Standing still, Lu Yi looked towards the Myriad Demon Ridge camp and said softly, Who wants to die? On the Myriad Demon Ridge side, pairs of mocking eyes looked over, looking at Lu Yi as if they were looking at a dead man. In their minds, this Blue Blood sect disciple must have lost his mind to make such a proposal. A trivial fifth-order cultivator daring to provoke the entire Myriad Demon Ridge camp was simply overestimating himself. Now that the Heaven's Fate contract had been established, Grand Heaven Union had no room to go back on their word. Anyone who dared to interfere with this battle would be suppressed by the masters of both sides under the constraints of the Heaven's Fate contract. So, even someone like Yan Xing did not dare to act rashly at this time. He could only stare fiercely at Li Baxian across the Golden Dome. Chapter 160. Fortunately, in order to appease Yan Xing, Li Baxian had agreed to give him a chance to settle their grudges after this matter was over. This was also the reason why Yan Xing could sit here peacefully. Many of the Myriad Demon Ridge cultivators had a hint of excitement in their eyes. The fifth-order cultivator standing on top of the golden light was a living treasure trove. As long as he could kill him, the rewards he would receive would be inexhaustible. Almost at the same time as Lu Yi shouted, a burly man jumped out, I'll do it. Although this guy was only a fifth-order cultivator, he was obviously a physique cultivator. He wanted to rely on his thick skin to test Lu Ye's ability. At the same time, he also wanted to get lucky. If he could kill Lu Yi, he would become rich overnight. Blue Blood sect, Lu Yi called out. White Wolf City, Shirley. After saying this, he reached into his storage pouch, wanting to take out his defensive spirit artifact. With a defensive spirit artifact, he would be in an invincible position. However, just as he reached into his storage pouch, his expression changed greatly. Lu Yi was rushing towards him at an extremely fast speed. In a few steps, Lu Yi had already arrived in front of this man. This physique cultivator named Shirley had just taken out his defensive spirit artifact, a small shield-like spirit artifact. He hurriedly retreated while pouring his spirit chi into his spirit artifact. The long saber was unsheathed and a fiery red spirit chi flashed. Shirley stood in place and looked at Lu Yi in horror. A line of blood appeared on his throat and quickly expanded. Then, a fountain of blood gushed out and his head flew high into the air. Behind the headless corpse, many Myriad Demons Ridge cultivators looked at this scene in shock. All of them were dumbfounded. Although Han Jiyu had said that Lu Yi could kill people above his realm, it was still surprising that he could kill a cultivator of the same cultivation so quickly. One had to know that Shirley was a physique cultivator with thick skin. The battle was over almost immediately after the two sides reported their names. Idiot! One of the experts from the Myriad Devil Ridge, who was on the Spirit Stream list, coldly snorted. He was talking about the guy named Shirley. He knew that his opponent was not to be trifled with, yet he had still underestimated him. He hadn't made any preparations before the battle, and had only taken out his defensive spiritual item after entering the arena. Such a person was destined to have a hard time achieving anything. Even if he didn't die today, he would die sooner or later. After a short moment of surprise, the Grand Heaven Alliance camp erupted in cheers. Among them, Li Baxian's cheers were the loudest. Wei Yang's tense expression also relaxed a little. Lu Yi kept Shirley's small shield and storage bag before turning around and tossing them out. Wei Yang caught them. These were his spoils of war, his first spoils of war. It was a beautiful tradition to collect the spoils of war after killing the enemy. No matter what, it could not be discarded. After losing the first battle, many cultivators from the Myriad Devil Ridge felt humiliated. But most of them knew that this was just the beginning. The Myriad Devil Ridge was taking turns to fight Lu Yi. Every sect that came here had a quota to fight. They could lose, they could die, and the people behind them would always have a chance. But Lu Yi couldn't. If he lost even once, he would die without a doubt. Within 3 days, there would be at least a few dozen battles, if not more. How could a mere fifth order survive? Next, before Lu Yi returned to his camp, he gently shook off the blood on his blade. The stewards of the Myriad Devil Ridge's great sects secretly discussed, and soon a person walked out. It was a woman with good looks and a voluptuous figure. The key was that this woman wore very little, so she attracted a lot of attention as soon as she appeared. Wei Yang's face sank when she saw her. Slutty fox. Li Baxian also frowned, secretly worried. Facing such a beauty, it would be difficult for a hot-blooded youth to kill her. It had to be said that the second person chosen by Myriad Devil Ridge was very targeted. Turning his head to look at Lu Yi, seeing his calm expression, he once again introduced himself. Blue Blood Sect, Lu Yi. The woman turned her head to look at the corpse not far away and shrunk her neck, as if she was still a little afraid. Her timid expression was really pitiful. Hearing Lu Ye's voice, she sweetly replied, Windflower Courtyard, Shu Shui. With a bang, mud and stone flew up from the ground as Lu Yi rushed towards her, his movements extremely fast. Junior brother, don't be impatient. The delicate Chu Shui spoke coquettishly, but her attacks were extremely ruthless. Raising her hand, a blazing fireball appeared, followed by a light blue wind blade. The key was that when this woman attacked, her thin clothes couldn't cover her body at all, allowing the spectating cultivators to feast their eyes on her. Shameless! Wei Yang was about to explode in anger, wishing she could go up and twist off this cheap slut's head. Not good! Li Baxian's expression changed. In the ring, Lu Yi raised his blade and slashed towards the fireball. This fireball was even weaker than Dong Shai's, so he wasn't afraid. However, before he could hit the fireball, the wind blade behind it suddenly exploded. A smug smile appeared on the face of the woman called Chu Shui as she muttered in her heart, Success! A gust of wind rose, and the wind fanned the flames. The fireball suddenly turned into a raging inferno, its power increasing by more than 30% as it shot towards Lu Yi. This was Chu Shui's best technique. As a sixth-order cultivator, she didn't underestimate Lu Yi, who was a minor realm lower than her. After all, the corpse of the body cultivator from before was right next to her feet, so she used her trump card to kill Lu Yi in one fell swoop. However, just as her smile bloomed on her face, it became incomparably stiff. Amidst the raging flames, Lu Ye's figure brazenly rushed out, his already extremely fast speed suddenly increasing. Chu Shui's beautiful face turned pale as she hurriedly urged her secret technique to resist. However, it was too late. Lu Yi rushed forward and cut off one of her raised arms, then broke through the spirit chi barrier in front of her, taking advantage of the momentum to cut open a wound on her chest. A mournful scream rang out as the naked woman stumbled back, tears blurring her eyes. The last thing she saw was a flash of saber light. In front of the woman's corpse, Lu Yi stood awkwardly. He had suffered a bit just now, but fortunately, he had hurriedly urged his secret technique to resist when he realized something was wrong, so he didn't suffer too much damage. However, some of his hair and clothes were burnt. This time, he didn't return to his original position, but stood in front of the Myriad Demon Ridge camp and slowly raised his saber. Next, The tip of his saber seemed to be pointed at every myriad Demon Ridge cultivator. Behind him, the Grand Heaven Alliance cultivators were silent. Many people didn't know whether to laugh or cry. This little brat from Blue Blood sect was a bit too arrogant. But this scene really made one's body and mind clear. Good kill. Wei Yang's eyes curved into crescents. Little junior brother's ruthless performance was undoubtedly to her liking. What's Snow White and full legs? In front of the camp, they were just a pile of rotten meat. Li Baxian's eyes twitched. Why is he the same as third senior brother? And they both use sabers. He suddenly became a little mad. Why use sabers? The third battle soon began. According to the terms of the Heaven Fate contract, Lu Yi had the opportunity to rest for an incense stick worth of time after each battle, but since he didn't choose, the myriad Demon Ridge side naturally wouldn't give him any time to breathe. In the ring, Lu Yi was chasing after the Sixth Order cultivator, and in just a short while, the latter could only parry his attacks and couldn't fight back. Seeing this scene, the myriad Demon Ridge cultivators secretly rejoiced. Fortunately, they knew in advance that this little brat from Blue Blood sect could kill opponents above his realm. Otherwise, if they had agreed to his initial proposal, no Fifth Order cultivator would have dared to go up and die. Even a Sixth Order cultivator wasn't his opponent, let alone a Fifth Order cultivator. A saber light flashed and blood splattered. Lu Yi rushed forward and was about to cut his opponent to death when his opponent shouted, "I admit defeat." The saber in Lu Ye's hand stopped in front of his opponent's neck. The sharp edge of the saber cut open a layer of flesh, causing blood to gush out. "I admit defeat." The man hurriedly jumped back and reached out to touch his neck, a look of fear on his face. If he had shouted a little slower just now, he would have lost his head. Although admitting defeat was shameful, it was better than losing his life. Lu Yi withdrew his saber and didn't kill his opponent. It wasn't that he didn't want to, but that the Heaven Fate contract stipulated that the myriad Demon Ridge side had the opportunity to admit defeat. This opportunity was only for myriad Demon Ridge, and Lu Yi didn't have it. If he lost, he would die. It could be said that this battle wasn't fair from the beginning. But how could there be so much fairness in this world? The man retreated dejectedly. Thinking back to the short battle just now, he couldn't help but shiver. He had never encountered such an aggressive Fifth Order cultivator. When he was fighting, he couldn't help but have the illusion that he was the one with the lower cultivation. Again! Lu Yi looked forward. Someone jumped out. The fourth battle had begun. In the Grand Heaven Alliance camp, several masters on the Spirit Stream list gathered around Li Baxian. One of them frowned and said, "Although it's good to dampen the enemy's spirit, it consumes too much energy. I'm afraid he won't be able to last long." Yes, and although he is fierce when fighting, his attacks aren't methodical. "I'm afraid it will be difficult for him to deal with opponents with superb techniques," another person said. These people were all masters on the Spirit Stream list, so their vision was naturally extremely sharp. Although Lu Yi had only fought 3 battles, they had already seen the drawbacks. That was, Lu Yi was fighting too fiercely. If Lu Yi wasn't facing a large number of enemies, this kind of fierce fighting style would be the best way to deal with them, as it would often scare them off. However, he was facing too many enemies, so he had to fight steadily. What's more, with the masters on the Spirit Stream list present, it was impossible for the enemy to be scared off. Even if Lu Yi was twice as fierce, there would still be people who would fight him. Moreover, Lu Ye's attacks weren't methodical at all. Every strike was meant to kill. It could be said that he would use his saber whenever it was convenient to kill. This was the fighting style he had accumulated through battle after battle, as no one had ever taught him how to use a saber. Although this method was fierce, it also had a big flaw that could be easily seized by others. Chapter 161. If the experts of the Haotian Alliance could see this, how could the people of the Myriad Demon Ridge not see it? Therefore, the person sent by the Myriad Demon Ridge for the 4th round was a cultivator who was proficient in fighting techniques. He held a long sword, and under the activation of his spiritual power, the long sword in his hands seemed to come alive. He stabbed, pointed, raised, and flicked. All kinds of techniques were used, and it was really dazzling. However, after a few slashes from Lu Yi, this person's sword technique went from dazzling to messy. It wasn't easy for him to find an opening and thrust his sword towards Lu Ye's heart. In the end, he was blocked by a spirit pattern that flashed and disappeared. The defensive spirit pattern had been exposed by Han Zhaoyue, so Lu Yi naturally didn't want to hide it. He didn't activate it before because there was no need. However, facing such a skilled opponent, the defensive spirit pattern was very important. He had encountered such a skilled opponent in the battle to save Hu Pe, so he knew how to deal with such a person. That was to not compete with the opponent in terms of skills. No matter how skilled the opponent was, he had to take a few slashes from Lu Yi first. In short, it was a fight between the opponent and Lu Yi. The sword that he was determined to kill did not succeed. When the long sword slashed down, the myriad Demon Ridge cultivator's eyes were filled with horror. He opened his mouth and shouted, "I admit." Before he could say the last word, his head had already fallen to the ground. Lu Yi stood on the spot. His blood and qi were surging, and his killing intent was soaring. He understood that as long as he attacked fast enough, the opponent wouldn't have time to shout and admit defeat. It wasn't that he didn't know that he would consume a lot of energy if he continued fighting like this. He also knew that he should stall for time, but he was only one person after all. He didn't know how many battles he had to face. Only by killing the enemy and making them afraid would the situation he had to face later turn for the better. Staring at the corpse lying on the ground, Lu Yi suddenly realized that this kind of skilled opponent didn't seem to be very difficult to deal with. When he saved Hu Pe, he almost died together with the enemy. In the end, although he killed the enemy, he was seriously injured. Hu Pe brought him back to find Hua Ci for treatment, and that black-hearted woman ridiculed him for a long time. He slowly came to his senses. It wasn't that the enemy wasn't difficult to deal with, but that he had more experience in fighting enemies. The battles, the blood, and the wounds not only brought about an increase in strength, but also an increase in experience and eyesight. Indeed, he did not have any method to kill his enemies, but every slash he made was the most smooth and perfect slash. Compared to a rigid method, this was the best technique. This was a killing technique. "Junior brother." Li Baxian's voice suddenly came from behind Lu Yi. After killing that person, Lu Yi stood in place without moving, as if he had been hit by a spell. His opponent had already jumped out, yet he was still indifferent. Lu Yi came back to his senses. It turned out that unknowingly, he had already possessed many things that he had never noticed before. Lu Ye's sword. Calm's sword's Lu Ye's sword. Lu Ye's sword. Only then did Lu Yi get a clear look at his opponent. It was a burly fellow with a finger-wide greatsword in his hands. He leaped into the air and slashed down viciously. The moment their weapons collided, Lu Ye's body sank slightly. He shifted his center of gravity and steadied himself. Then he pushed his sword back. When the ear-piercing sound of friction rang out, a look of disbelief appeared in the sturdy male cultivator's eyes. He was sent flying by an irresistible force. Everyone was dumbfounded by this scene. Lu Yi couldn't be compared to his opponent at all. His opponent this time was obviously a strong and ferocious cultivator. This kind of person was naturally suited to walk the path of a body cultivator. However, this guy probably wanted to become a weapon cultivator. That was why he chose such an exaggerated weapon. He wanted to defeat 10 people with brute force. Lu Ye's choice wasn't wrong. Along the way, no cultivator of the same level could compete with him in terms of strength. Even if there was someone close to his strength, they would still be cut by his exaggerated sword until they doubted their life. Until this time, what made it even more difficult for him to accept was that his opponent had actually sent him flying with only one hand holding a sword. This time, it was his turn to doubt his life. What a strong force! Next to Li Baxian, an expert on the spirit stream list whispered. He didn't know if it was an illusion, but he felt that something on Lu Ye's body seemed to have changed. If Lu Yi had been a little timid before, then he was now completely unrestrained. Li Baxian's eyes flashed. He also saw something different. "You don't seem to have introduced yourself." In the ring, Lu Yi quickly followed after his opponent after sending him flying. Before his opponent landed on the ground, he slashed a few times, leaving several wounds on his body. Blood spurted out, and the man's face twisted in pain. When he landed on the ground, he raised his sword with both hands to block. However, Lu Ye's movements weren't exactly nimble. Compared to him, Lu Ye was like a dancing butterfly, extremely nimble and agile. In the blink of an eye, the man's body was covered in wounds. Fortunately, the wounds weren't deep, which gave him the illusion that he could continue to fight. However, the onlookers could clearly see that the reason he could still stand in the ring was because Lu Ye didn't kill him at all. He seemed to be deliberately torturing his opponent. "Which sect are you from?" Lu Ye asked again, while forcing his opponent to retreat with a slash. The strong male cultivator panted. Although he knew he was no match for Lu Ye, he still stubbornly replied, "Ningyi Fort?" After getting the answer he wanted, Lu Ye nodded slightly. Mud and stones splashed under his feet, and he instantly appeared in front of his opponent. His speed was so fast that the strong male cultivator couldn't react in time. When he saw Lu Ye's slash, he could only hurriedly raise his sword to block in front of him. Lu Ye immediately stabbed with his saber. This time, the saber stabbed through his chest and came out from his back, directly piercing through his opponent. When he pulled out the saber, blood spurted out. Lu Ye then kicked out, sending the man flying. The man lay on the ground, feeling his life ebbing away. Even in death, he couldn't understand one thing. Why didn't his enemy kill him earlier when he could have done so quickly? In the Grand Heaven Alliance camp, Wei Yang whispered softly, "Our little junior brother seems to be very vengeful." Li Baxian nodded in agreement. Asking about his opponent's background twice during the battle clearly wasn't because he appreciated his opponent's talent, but because he wanted to remember the sect behind his opponent. Moreover, after getting the answer he wanted, he immediately finished off his opponent. He couldn't help but grin. His little junior brother was so relaxed, which meant he was somewhat confident. If he couldn't survive this battle, then remembering his opponent's sect was meaningless. No wonder he would report his sect before every battle. Li Baxian thought he was a good kid who knew etiquette, but he didn't expect that he would just remember them in his little notebook. In the ring, Lu Ye raised his hand, "I need to rest." He didn't continue to kill. He had defeated 5 people in a row in the first battle, and 4 of them were killed. Except for the first one who was a 5th order, the others were all 6th order. The initial display of strength was enough. The spirit chi in his body was consumed, but not by much. After all, every battle ended quickly, but this was a protracted battle, so he needed to rest to ensure that his spirit chi was abundant. This was his right, and also something that was agreed upon in the Heaven's secret contract. Naturally, no one from Myriad Demon Ridge could refuse. Soon, Lu Ye returned to his camp. Under the care of Li Baxian, Wei Yang, and the others, he swallowed a spirit pill and pretended to take out 2 spirit stones. He didn't construct spirit-gathering spirit runes in his spirit apertures because the time to rest was too short. No matter how small the consumption of spirit-gathering spirit runes was, there was still a consumption. The cost was not proportional to the benefits. He just switched his secret art to gluttonous feast to speed up the refinement of the spirit pill. While he was recuperating, several experts from the Myriad Demon's Ridge had gathered together and were secretly discussing how to deal with the situation. Han Zhiyu was called over, and the master in the top 20 of the Spirit Stream list asked, "The strength and speed of this boy from Blue Blood sect are extraordinary. This is not something a 5th-order cultivator can possess. Was he like this before?" In the previous few battles, they could see that the biggest reason why Lu Ye could defeat stronger opponents was not because of the defensive spirit rune, but because of the speed and strength of his attacks. In these few battles, the number of times Lu Ye had activated his defensive spirit rune could be counted on one hand. So, even if his cultivation was higher by 1 order, his speed was not as fast, and his strength was not as strong, he was still not his opponent. This question confused Han Zhiyu. She really didn't know what Lu Ye was like before. During the Dragon Spring Festival, she was only sitting in the main hall of the central peak, so she didn't see with her own eyes how Lu Ye killed her own cultivators. After pondering for a moment, Han Zhiyu said, "This might have something to do with him entering the Dragon Spring to temper his body." Dragon Spring to temper his body? The person who asked the question frowned. Obviously, he had never heard of it. The Spirit Stream battlefield was so big, and there were resources everywhere. Although the dragon spring was good, it was only for low-level cultivators. It wasn't very famous in the entire battlefield. Han Zhiyu briefly explained the Dragon Spring Festival and finally said, this time, there was a problem with the Dragon Spring. When our Tai Luo sect disciples entered, the power of the Dragon Spring was almost negligible. After that, we checked with Blue Feather Mountain and found that they didn't get many benefits. Speaking of this, she was angry. The Dragon Spring Festival was not only a competition between the disciples of the three sects to enter the Dragon Spring, but it was also a confrontation between the three forces. Tai Luo sect had lost so many people this time, and it was not easy for them to get some spots. In the end, their disciples didn't get many benefits inside, which was equivalent to those disciples dying in vain. No one could bear this, so when Han Zhiyu heard the news about Lu Yi, she hurried over to kill him. It seems that it has nothing to do with the Dragon Spring. The Myriad Demon Ridge Master frowned, so, it seems that he is talented? No wonder he had the courage to jump out and be so arrogant, even daring to challenge the entire Myriad Demon Ridge. However, he didn't panic. This battle had just begun. Although 5 people had been defeated, there were still many people who hadn't fought. As long as they arranged it well, Lu Yi would be dead in 3 days. Chapter 162. An incense stick worth of time passed quickly. Lu Yi stood up and walked to his battlefield. Myriad Demon Ridge's side immediately faced a tall man. This man was bare-chested and had thick hair on his chest. What was even more eye-catching was the pair of horns on his head. This was a monster cultivator. Tall and sturdy figures and vigorous blood and chi were the characteristics of many Yao cultivators, so they were very suitable to walk the path of body cultivation. The major sects also liked to recruit such Yao cultivators. With a little training, they would be good disciples. This monster cultivator also held a round shield the size of a wash basin in one hand. Looking at the spirit aura, it was obvious that this was a good spirit artifact. Myriad Demon Ridge's response was obvious. Since Lu Yi, a 5th order cultivator, had strength and speed that surpassed a 6th order, they would not let an armament cultivator fight. Because even if they were both armament cultivators, they would not be able to compare in strength and speed. Just having a higher cultivation was meaningless. The few armament cultivators who had fought before were the best examples. Since armament cultivators were not available and ghost cultivators were few in number, they were not suitable for head-on combat. Therefore, they could only choose body cultivators and spirit cultivators. Lu Ye's offensive power was indeed very strong. Since that was the case, they would use a strong defense to deal with him. After seeing Lu Ye's previous battles, Myriad Demon Ridge did not expect to take him down in a few battles, but there would come a time when he could not hold on. When that time came, Myriad Demon Ridge would be able to pick the fruits of victory. Blue Blood Sect, Lu Yi. Lu Yi was still polite. The monster cultivator's mouth twitched. He did not want to respond, but if he did not respond, it would seem that he was afraid of Lu Yi. So, he shouted, 100 Barbarian Mountain, Niu Meng. When his voice fell, he raised the shield spirit artifact on his arm and poured his spirit chi into it. The shield's defense expanded, forming a barrier that covered a radius of 1 meter in front of him. His vitality began to boil as he gathered his spirit chi to form a second layer of defense around his body. He assumed a defensive posture. This was the plan his senior brother had formulated when he was preparing to go on stage. He was good at blocking others' attacks, but he was not good at offense. His speed was not as good as his opponent's, so his senior brother had told him to defend himself as soon as he went on stage. He did not need to do too much. Just focus on defending against the attacks of Blue Blood Sect and try to delay as much as possible to consume his opponent's physical strength and energy. He did as he was told. However, the expected attack didn't come. He raised his eyes and looked forward through his spirit tool, but he saw that Lu Yi didn't charge at him like he had in the previous battle. Instead, he stood quietly in place, looking at him indifferently. Fierce Bull scratched his head and turned to look at his senior brothers and sisters. Clearly, he wanted to ask them how they should deal with this situation. The several senior brothers and senior sisters were also dumbfounded. They hadn't expected Lu Yi, who had been so aggressive just a moment ago, to suddenly change. An 8th order cultivator who also had the characteristics of a monster cultivator said, "If he doesn't come over, kill him and force him to fight you." Stalling for time was clearly advantageous to Lu Yi. The Heaven's secret contract had a 3-day time limit, so the Myriad Demon Ridge didn't want to stall for time no matter what. They wanted nothing more than to keep fighting with Lu Yi. If it weren't for Li Baxian's strenuous efforts, they wouldn't have given him the time it takes for an incense stick to burn after each battle. "Oh!" Fierce Bull responded, raised his spirit tool, and rushed towards Lu Yi. Although his speed wasn't fast, his momentum was astonishing, giving off the feeling of a wall crashing into him. After entering the Spirit Stream battlefield for so long, this was the first time Lu Yi had encountered an opponent who had put up such a strong defense before the battle had even begun. He didn't rush over immediately and was just looking for a flaw in his opponent's defense, but after looking around, there didn't seem to be any. Seeing that his opponent was already rushing over, he could only take action. The distance between them quickly closed, and when it was about time, Fierce Bull pulled back his arm slightly before pushing it out again. At that moment, the spirit chi barrier formed from the shield spirit tool on his arm expanded outwards, as if a real wall was crashing into Lu Yi. If this hit landed, Lu Yi would at least be dizzy for a while, if not broken bones or broken tendons. Fortunately, Lu Yi sensed that something was wrong and leapt up, flying over Fierce Bull's head and slashing down with his saber. Fierce Bull raised his hand, using the defensive power of his spirit tool to block this attack. Before he could turn around, the sound of a saber slicing through the air came from behind him. A saber light flashed, and Fierce Bull felt his protective spirit power and blood chi being sliced apart. Pain radiated from his back, and he hurriedly turned around, throwing out a punch. However, Lu Yi had already retreated, and his punch hit thin air. In an instant, the exchange of blows ended with a wound on the back of this demon cultivator called Fierce Bull. Ouch! Fierce Bull's nostrils flared, and his eyes turned red. The intense pain filled his already dull mind with rage, and he only wanted to crush this enemy in front of him. This was the disadvantage of demonic beasts. When their cultivation level wasn't high, their intelligence wasn't high, and they were easily influenced by their bestial instincts. This situation would only improve after reaching the Cloud River tier. With this thought in mind, he reached out to grab Lu Yi. His large, fan-like hand opened wide, almost completely blocking Lu Yi's vision. Lu Yi lowered his body, slid under Fierce Bull's armpit, and arrived behind him again. He slashed down at the same spot. Fierce Bull staggered, and blood flowed from his back, dyeing the ground red. He turned around again, wanting to fight again, but another thunderous voice called out, "Admit defeat." It was the 8th Order's senior brother who couldn't stand it anymore. He knew that his junior brother Bull would die if they continued fighting, so he rushed out, grabbed Fierce Bull's horns, and dragged him back into the crowd. Fierce Bull was at a loss. Lu Yi didn't chase after him. He felt that his opponent this time was a little silly, but this demonic beast was indeed powerful. He didn't die after taking 2 slashes from him. One had to know that each slash was enhanced with sharpness spirit runes. An ordinary 6th Order would have been cut in half, but although Fierce Bull's injuries weren't light, they weren't life-threatening. This made him realize that if he were to fight against a demonic beast in the future, he would have to slash a few more times. "Little junior brother, do you need to rest?" Li Baxian asked with concern. "No need." Lu Yi shook his head and looked at the Myriad Demon Ridge camp. Another sturdy body cultivator stepped forward with a solemn look on his face. 20 breaths later, this body cultivator fell into a pool of blood, a huge wound on his neck bleeding profusely as his body twitched. Although this guy was also a body cultivator, he didn't have Fierce Bull's innately strong physique, so he couldn't escape death. Battle after battle continued, and unless Lu Yi needed to rest, the Myriad Demon Ridge side would send a new challenger onto the stage every time a battle ended. The Myriad Demon Ridge side originally planned to use body cultivators to consume Lu Yi's physical strength and energy, but after a few battles, they helplessly found that although this idea was good, it couldn't be implemented because even body cultivators couldn't resist Lu Yi's slashes. The spirit artifact in the hands of this blue blood sect disciple was too sharp. The defense and physique that body cultivators relied on to survive was simply too fragile in front of his long saber. This was proven after Lu Yi shattered a body cultivator's defensive spirit artifact with just 3 slashes. That was a defensive spirit artifact. Even if it was only a low-rank spirit artifact, it was still a defensive spirit artifact. If they hadn't seen it with their own eyes, they wouldn't have believed it. The Myriad Demon Ridge side tried to send out a few more body cultivators, but the results were even worse. Because of the limitations of the arena, the body cultivators could only be 20 meters away from Lu Yi at most. With Lu Ye's full speed, he could cross the distance of 20 meters in 3 breaths. It was easy to imagine what would happen to a body cultivator after getting close to a body cultivator. As night fell, the cultivators of Grand Heaven Alliance were talking loudly. Some were even drinking wine and playing the zither. It was extremely lively. On the other hand, the Myriad Demon Ridge side was shrouded in a gloomy atmosphere like a fog on a cloudy day. All the Myriad Demon Ridge cultivators had ugly expressions, as if their parents had died. There was no other reason. Lu Yi had been waiting in the arena for half an hour, but no one came up to fight. Throughout the day, more than a dozen people had been killed by Lu Yi. Even the best 6th Order cultivators couldn't last more than 30 breaths in front of Lu Yi. Most of them were either killed or injured after a few slashes. Those who shouted quickly could admit defeat to save their lives, but those who shouted slowly could only die on the spot. In short, the people of Myriad Demon Ridge were scared of killing. No one dared to go up to fight easily anymore, even if the person standing there was a living treasure trove. Moreover, with each victory, Lu Ye's body had undergone some wonderful changes. His blood qi and murderous aura condensed around him, forming an indescribable momentum. It seemed to be the manifestation of his own beliefs. He was unstoppable and invincible. Brotherly, if your junior brother doesn't die this time, his future will be boundless, a Spirit Stream List Master from Grand Heaven Alliance said to Li Baxian. The corners of Li Baxian's mouth almost reached his ears as he laughed heartily. My junior brother, of course. Brotherly, you know what I'm talking about. Li Baxian's eyes flashed, but he didn't answer. It wasn't easy to answer. Invincible posture, the blessing of heaven's secret. Li Baxian didn't answer, but someone beside him spoke up. It was another Spirit Stream List Master. Obviously, he had also noticed something. Li Baxian smiled gently. It's still too early to say. There are already signs. That person slowly shook his head. The blessing of heaven's secret was something that only existed in legends. In the 9 continents, in the Spirit Stream battlefield, heaven's secret was everywhere. It was said that those with invincible posture would be able to obtain the blessing of heaven's secret and be reborn. Being invincible was a saying, an aura, and a belief. In order to form this belief, one had to accumulate it through battle after battle. When the accumulation reached a limit, one would be able to trigger the will of the heavens and obtain its blessings. However, since ancient times, there were many cultivators in the 9 continents, but only a few had obtained the blessing of heaven's secret. The last time it appeared was a few dozen years ago. The person who was blessed by heaven's secret was called Feng Wujiang. Coincidentally, this person was also a disciple of the Blue Blood sect. Chapter 163. The masters on the Spirit Stream list all had good eyesight, so naturally, they were able to see through this. This time, Lu Yi had taken the initiative to challenge the various sects of Myriad Demon Ridge. Although he had been forced to do so, it was actually an opportunity for him to accumulate a bit of invincibility. It was just that he didn't know this. Of course, if he wanted to accumulate strength, he first had to survive. Although Lu Yi had frightened the Myriad Demon Ridge side during the day and no one dared to challenge him, in fact, the situation hadn't improved much for him. In fact, it had even worsened a bit. Because of the battle during the day, the Myriad Demon Ridge side had basically figured out Lu Yi's foundation and could now better target him. At this moment, no one dared to challenge Lu Yi because there were some disputes and disagreements between the various sects of Myriad Demon Ridge and several Spirit Stream list masters were trying to mediate. In the end, it was the top 20 masters who spoke up, then it's decided. No matter who killed Lu Yi, they will get 20% of the reward, and the rest will be divided equally among the sects who contributed. Does anyone have any objections? When he said this, he coldly glanced at the stewards of the various forces around him. The disagreements and disputes on the Myriad Demon Ridge side were mainly about the reward for killing Lu Yi. Everyone had seen the battle during the day and only a few people had survived. Each sect could only fight once, so if a disciple they sent out died, they wouldn't have the chance to receive the reward. This led to everyone wanting to take advantage of the situation. If this problem wasn't resolved, it would be difficult for the Myriad Demon Ridge side to work together. After all, the rewards added up were too great, and no one was willing to become someone else's stepping stone. The decision that the one who killed Lu Yi would take 20% of the reward, and the rest would be divided equally among the sects who contributed was supported by everyone. In this way, even if their disciples failed to kill Lu Yi, as long as they contributed, they would be able to get a share of the benefits. If there are no objections, then arrange for your own people to find a way to break his fangs. Whoever breaks his fangs will get an extra 10% after this. The master said coldly. The strength displayed by Lu Yi had made Myriad Demon Ridge abandon any plans to take his life in a certain battle. Although he was only a 5th-order cultivator, he was far stronger than an average 6th-order cultivator. Unless a 7th-order master took action, it was impossible to be his opponent. As such, Myriad Demon Ridge had divided the matter of killing Lu Yi into 2 parts. A moment later, Lu Yi, who was sitting cross-legged on the stage, slowly stood up and swallowed the dried meat in his mouth. Eating was to replenish his physical strength and to refine his essence into qi. He couldn't completely rely on spirit pills to replenish his spiritual energy. His talent tree had lost its ability to burn pill toxins. If he took too many spirit pills, it would cause his spiritual energy to become obscure and affect his combat ability. Now, his spiritual energy was no longer as pure as before because he had consumed a lot of spiritual pills during his escape. Although the effect of transforming energy into qi was much worse, it was better than nothing. Moreover, with the assistance of the gluttonous meal, he could digest things very quickly. Another person from Myriad Demon Ridge jumped out. Lu Yi looked over and saw that it was a weapon cultivator holding a long spear. As usual, he exchanged greetings with the other party. The opponent rushed towards him, the long spear in his hand flashing as he attacked Lu Ye's vital points. After a few dozen breaths, the weapon cultivator was cut down to the ground. Lu Yi didn't continue fighting because he found that the effect of his display of strength during the day was not obvious, so he simply didn't want to waste his energy. These guys from Myriad Demon Ridge didn't seem to be afraid of death. This might have something to do with the special environment of the Spirit Stream battlefield. The 2 camps here had been fighting each other all year round. Every cultivator who reached the 6th order had to kill their way to the top, so life and death battles with their enemies were commonplace for them. Thinking back to the Myriad Demon Ridge cultivators he had killed before, it seemed that very few of them had begged for mercy before dying. Most of them had said ruthless words before they died. For example, Dong Shuyi had said before he died that he would wait for Lu Yi on the Yellow Springs Road, even though it was useless, because everyone knew that begging for mercy was useless if they couldn't escape after being defeated by a cultivator from the enemy camp. This created a kind of ruthlessness in the cultivators of the 9 regions. The higher one's cultivation was, the more obvious it was. Rest, kill the enemy, rest again, and kill the enemy again, over and over again. Fresh lives jumped up one after another. Most of them turned into corpses, and only a few managed to escape. The sky gradually brightened, and the losses of Myriad Demon Ridge continued to increase. However, this didn't seem to have much of an impact on the latecomers. Those who jumped up were scared, but this didn't affect their determination to fight. Another night fell. The ground of the arena was covered in blood, and the pungent smell of blood permeated the air. It was so thick that it seemed impossible to disperse. Near the Grand Heaven Alliance camp, Lu Yi sat cross-legged, holding a spirit stone in each hand. There was still a piece of jerky in his mouth that he hadn't swallowed. His head was lowered as he took a nap. After fighting for 2 days and 1 night in a row, he was already very tired, so he had to rest every time he fought, taking advantage of this rare opportunity to rest for a while. As for recovery, Under the automatic operation of gluttony meal, he didn't need to worry about it after swallowing a spirit pill. Wei Yang looked at him from the side with a pained expression. After such a long battle, it was inevitable that Lu Yi would be injured. Under normal circumstances, Wei Yang could easily deal with these injuries, but because of the restriction of the Heaven's secret contract, Lu Yi could not borrow any external help. Even his wounds were bandaged by himself. His clothes had long been stained red with blood and were thrown away by him. His upper body was wrapped in some cotton cloth, and his wounds were covered with the healing powder that Hua Xi had given him. "How many matches has it been?" someone asked Li Baxian. Li Baxian squirmed his dry lips. 32 matches? 32 matches. The person who asked the question took a light breath and looked at Lu Yi with a complicated expression. What an amazing record this was. It must be known that this was 32 matches of cross-realm battles. According to the current frequency, they should be able to fight 40 matches by dawn. Previously, when the two sides signed the Heavenly Mystery Contract, only 43 sects had left their names on it. No one thought that Lu Yi could fight 43 matches. Even Li Baxian didn't think this would happen. He thought that if Lu Yi could survive the 3-day limit, he would win. If Li Baxian didn't think of this, then the Myriad Demon Ridge side naturally didn't. What kind of person could fight 43 matches without losing? Such a thing had never happened in the cultivation world of the 9 provinces. In the eyes of the Myriad Demon Ridge masters who led this matter, Lu Yi was dead for sure. But everyone underestimated Lu Ye's killing speed. Those 6th Order realm cultivators were often cut down by Lu Yi in a very short time. Only half of the 3-day limit had passed, and 32 matches had already been fought. On the Heavenly Mystery Contract, there were only 11 sects that hadn't fought. Even if more cultivators from both sides heard the news and gathered here, causing the number of people on the Golden Light to exceed 4,000, as long as Lu Yi was still alive after 43 matches, he would win. No matter how unwilling the Myriad Demon Ridge cultivators were, they didn't dare to do anything. Because of the restrictions of the Heavenly Mystery Contract, if they tried to attack Lu Yi, not only would they be attacked by Grand Heaven Alliance, but the 43 sects that had left their names on the Heavenly Mystery Contract, as well as the masters on the Spirit Stream list, would also attack them. This was the justice of the Heavenly Mystery Contract, and no one was allowed to provoke it. There were only 11 matches left until the final victory, but Li Baxian's heart was becoming more and more uneasy. He didn't know if his little junior brother could continue, because the spirit aura around his little junior brother's body had become somewhat obscure. This was caused by the large number of spirit pills he had swallowed. This undoubtedly had a great impact on his little junior brother, as the obscurity of his spirit aura would affect his strength. The most obvious point was that Lu Ye's killing speed had slowed down. His saber wasn't as sharp as before, and his speed wasn't as fast as before. Every battle took longer and longer, and the longer the battle, the greater his consumption and the more spirit pills he needed to replenish his spirit aura. This was a vicious cycle. After an incense stick's worth of time, Wei Yang couldn't bear it, but she still gently poked Lu Yi. "Little junior brother." Lu Yi suddenly raised his head, his eyes filled with exhaustion. At first, he was at a loss, but then he reacted and swallowed the dried meat in his mouth. He stood up with his saber and looked at the Myriad Demon Ridge cultivators opposite him, saying the same words he had said more than 30 times, "Blue Blood Sect, Lu Yi." The battle began again. On the stage, saber lights flashed and figures rushed forward, blood splattering everywhere. One battle after another began, then subsided, and the sky lit up again. On the stage, a petite figure moved like lightning, jumping around Lu Yi at an extremely fast speed. Lu Yi had several wounds on his body, and his flesh was torn apart. These were all caused by his opponent. He held his saber and stood quietly in place. After fighting so many battles, he finally met his first opponent who was difficult to deal with. This was a Yao cultivator with 2 furry ears on his head. He looked like a cat, but it wasn't a big deal. The key was that this guy was as agile as a cat. In terms of speed, Lu Yi wouldn't be able to beat him even at his peak. This guy must be one of the Myriad Demon Ridge's trump cards. They hadn't let her fight before because Lu Yi was in a good state. Now that Lu Yi was exhausted, The myriad demon Ridge probably felt that it was time to let this cat demon out. Once this trump card was brought out, Lu Yi fell into a passive position. He wasn't as fast as his opponent, and after several slashes, not only did he fail to kill his opponent, but he also exposed openings. This was how the wounds on his body came about. Another round of fast and dazzling exchanges ensued. When Lu Ye's saber fell, it left behind an afterimage. At the same time, pain came from his waist. He kicked out, and the cat demon blocked it with both hands. She flew back and landed nimbly. Lu Yi staggered back, his saber stabbing into the ground. He almost fell to his knees, causing Wei Yong to cry out in alarm. Chapter 164. On the blood-stained arena, Lu Yi looked up and saw the cat demon crouching with one hand on the ground and the other on her mouth. There was a pair of claws on each of her hands, and they were extremely sharp. She licked the blood off the claws, and her eyes shone with a demonic light. She let out a soft meow, as if provoking Lu Yi. She had a faint smile on her face. She could see that Lu Yi was about to lose and that victory was waving at her. She had a smooth figure and sharp claws. She was no cat, she was more like a cheetah. The figure crouching on the ground suddenly rushed forward and made a sharp turn when she got close. Lu Ye's eyes turned and looked to the side. He stood up and stabbed with his saber. An ear-piercing sound of friction rang out as sparks flew in all directions. Cat Demon's figure was revealed as the tip of the blade pierced through her cheek. The sharp blade left a small wound on her smooth and tender face. However, she was smiling because at this moment, she had already used her claws to clasp Lu Ye's long blade. Lu Yi wanted to pull his saber back, but he couldn't. The cat demon's other claws immediately fell and a light flashed on them. With a cracking sound, the spirit artifact saber that had accompanied Lu Yi for several months broke, leaving only half of its body. He had obtained this spirit artifact from the fair-skinned cultivator he killed in Blue Cloud Mountain. It only had a single seal to strengthen the saber, so it was the worst quality spirit artifact. The fair-skinned cultivator's cultivation wasn't high, so he couldn't afford a good spirit artifact. But even if the quality wasn't high, this spirit artifact saber still had unimaginable power in Lu Ye's hands because he could enhance it with sharpness spirit runes. Along the way, at least 50 or 60 myriad demons ridge cultivators had died under this saber. If this round of tag team battles were included, the number had already exceeded 100. But today, the saber that had accompanied Lu Yi all this time had been cut in half. Many cultivators from Grand Heaven Alliance paled. A cultivator's strength would definitely be affected if their spirit artifact was broken, especially for Lu Yi. The reason why he could kill so many sixth-order cultivators was partly because of his own strength, but this spirit artifact also played an important role. On the other hand, the myriad demons ridge cultivators all breathed a sigh of relief, especially the masters on the spirit stream list. They were all grinning from ear to ear. It was a sure win. Whether it was Grand Heaven Alliance or Myriad Demon Ridge, they all believed that the saber in Lu Ye's hand was an excellent quality spirit artifact. The fact that the sixth-order cultivators couldn't even fight back was the best proof. This spirit artifact saber was Lu Ye's fangs. Therefore, the Myriad Devil Ridge had been trying to find a way to cut off this fang. As long as this fang was broken, the Myriad Devil Ridge would be in an invincible position. The cultivators that came out before would always choose to attack Lu Yi. It wasn't because they thought they could beat Lu Yi, but because they wanted to break the saber in Lu Ye's hand. Unfortunately, no one had ever succeeded. At this moment, the cat demon did not disappoint. With her swift speed and 2 claws, she broke the saber that was stained with the blood of the Myriad Demon's Ridge cultivator. With his fangs broken, this blue blood sect disciple named Lu Yi no longer had any room to resist. The moment the long saber broke, the cat demon pounced on Lu Yi excitedly. Her 2 bright eyes were filled with excitement. She seemed to see a large amount of rewards waving at her. She even saw Lu Yi brandishing the broken saber and slashing at her. If it were before, she would definitely dodge such a saber. After all, she was known for her speed and her defense was not very good. If she was hit by Lu Ye's saber, she wouldn't have a good ending. But now, she didn't dodge. Instead, she slammed into Lu Ye's chest, and the claws on her right hand went straight for Lu Ye's heart. Asterisk Pucci. Asterisk blood splashed as the cat demon's claws stabbed into Lu Ye's heart, but she froze in place. She raised her head and looked at Lu Yi with a puzzled expression. How did you? Lu Yi kicked the cat demon in front of her and sent her flying. While she was still in the air, she raised her hand to cover her throat. When she staggered to the ground, a large amount of blood flowed out from her hands. Blood also filled her mouth and nose. She seemed to want to say something but couldn't. After struggling for a moment, the light in her eyes quickly faded. Lu Yi raised his hand to cover his chest and took a deep breath. He sensed that the injury wasn't serious and didn't touch his heart. At that moment, he had the opportunity to activate the defensive spirit rune to block the attack. But now, his spiritual energy was decreasing. Moreover, after swallowing spirit pills, his spiritual energy became more and more obscure. So, under the premise that he could conserve his spiritual energy, he would do his best to conserve it. For this reason, he was willing to suffer a small injury. Amidst the silence, he walked to the Grand Sky Alliance's camp with the broken saber and sat down cross-legged. He took out healing powder from his storage bag and smeared it on his chest. Wei Yang looked at him and clenched her fists. She resisted the urge to bandage his wound. Idiot. On the Myriad Devil Ridge's side, an expert on the spirit stream list gritted his teeth and cursed. Lu Ye's weapon being broken just now was definitely the closest the Myriad Devil Ridge's side had taken to victory. At that time, the cat demon only needed to be more vigilant and had a great chance of killing Lu Yi. But this guy was too complacent and had his throat slit. He died without knowing how. After the 40th battle, there were only 3 battles left. The sky was already bright. However, it didn't matter anymore. Lu Ye's long saber was broken, so his strength was bound to be greatly weakened. The last 3 battles would be able to take him down no matter what. The experts on the spirit stream list looked at each other and let out a long sigh. Before signing the Heavenly Fate contract with Li Baxian, none of them had expected the situation to develop like this. Everyone thought that no matter how powerful Lu Yi was, he wouldn't be able to last 10 rounds. But now it was more than 10 rounds. It was already the 40th round. At this point, they were most thankful that Han Jiyu had provided them with the information. Otherwise, without knowing anything, they would have already killed all 43 sections. That would have been the biggest joke of the Myriad Devil Ridge. In front of the arena, the 3 cultivators from the Myriad Devil Ridge looked at each other. They were the challengers of the last 3 sections. One of them was from the Sacred Flame sect. There was a burning flame on his forehead, which was the symbol of their sacred flame. The other 2 were disciples from 2nd or 3rd rank sections. The reason they were ranked last was naturally related to their backgrounds. The sects behind the previous challengers were not as powerful as theirs, so they were ranked first. The first 40 people had used their blood and death to pave the way to victory. No matter who went up next, they would have a great chance of picking the fruits of victory. This was not only related to the generous rewards, but also their own futures. Therefore, all 3 of them wanted to go up next. However, the Sacred Flame sect was only a 4th rank sect, which was slightly weaker than the other 2 sections. After a moment of hesitation, they took the initiative to take a step back. It was obvious that they wanted to give the opportunity to the other 2. Senior brother Hu Ping, what do you think? One of them asked, eager to try. Junior brother Xian has given me a difficult problem. If I say I want to go first, you will definitely not agree. But if I let you go first, I will not be happy either. Hu Ping lowered his voice. At this juncture, we can't decide the winner first. Yes, but there has to be a first. Xian nodded. How about this? Let him choose. Whoever he chooses will be the winner. That's good. After a simple discussion, the 2 of them stood in place and waited. They looked at Lu Yi, who was adjusting himself in the arena, as if they were looking at a dead man. Near the Haotian Alliance, Lu Yi silently sensed his own condition. It was very bad. Even if he had 30 minutes to rest, he could not recover much of his spiritual power. After such a series of battles, he only had about 30% of his spiritual power left. Although there were many injuries on his body, they were not serious. The healing powder that Hua Ci had made for him was very effective for external injuries. However, the symptoms of blood loss still made him feel a little dizzy. He did not know how many people he had killed, nor did he know how many more battles he had to fight. However, he knew that if someone accepted the challenge, he had to stand up. This was the path he had chosen. As he had said before, he was not afraid of death, but he did not want to wait for it. The candles on the side burned out, and it was time to rest. Lu Yi stood up with the help of his broken saber and walked forward step by step. Wei Yong opened her mouth as if she wanted to say something, but in the end, she did not say anything. She wanted to tell Lu Yi that he only needed to win 3 more battles, but she was afraid that her words would affect Lu Ye's condition. Sometimes, it was not a good thing to know the future. On top of the golden light, there was a huge crowd. There were already more than 5,000 cultivators from both camps gathered here. When Lu Yi was resting, the sound of people talking could be heard. The scene was chaotic, but when he walked out, the whole world fell silent. Several thousand pairs of eyes were focused on him. Even the cultivators from the myriad Demon Ridge had lost their previous contempt and mockery. Everyone looked at him with an extremely dignified gaze. A 5th order cultivator who had fought 40 battles in a row and had not lost a single battle. Such a proud record would not allow anyone to blaspheme. Even the cultivators from the enemy camp would give him enough respect. It was foreseeable that for a long time in the future, the figure who carried a broken saber and walked step by step onto the blood-soaked stage would be the nightmare of many myriad Demon Ridge cultivators. On the stage, Lu Yi stood still as the mountain wind whistled past. On the myriad Demon Ridge side, 2 figures stood up. In the next moment, several thousand pairs of sharp eyes from the Haoyan Alliance stared at them. There was no lack of masters on the spirit stream list among them. Murderous intent instantly surged. The 2 myriad Demon Ridge cultivators were so scared that they almost shrank back. This battle array was too terrifying. Hu Ping knew that the situation was not good and hurriedly explained, "It's not 2 against 1. We just want Brother Yi to choose his own opponent." Xian nodded repeatedly, indicating that they disdained to do something as tasteless as 2 against 1. Lu Yi raised his broken saber and pointed it at Hu Ping with a calm expression, "Then I'll choose you." Hu Ping raised his eyebrows in pleasant surprise. Although Xian was unwilling, he still stepped back. Hu Ping took a deep breath and was just about to introduce himself to Lu Yi when he heard a loud thud. He could see Lu Ye's blood-stained dirt flying into the air as Lu Yi shot towards him like an arrow leaving the bowstring. Hu Ping was shocked. This guy would always introduce himself. Why didn't he even give him a chance to speak this time? Was he crazy? Chapter 165. No one had expected Lu Yi to take the initiative to attack. This caused many people in Myriad Demon Ridge to suspect that he was seeking death because his spirit artifact was broken. In a flash, the 2 had already exchanged blows. Clanging sounds rang out as their spirit artifacts collided. Hu Ping was also a weapon cultivator, and the spirit artifact in his hand was also a saber, but unlike Lu Ye's saber, Hu Ping's was much wider and shorter. It was a traditional machete. As a disciple of a 3rd-grade sect, Hu Ping's strength was not bad. Although he did not have a record of killing enemies above his realm, few people in the same realm were his opponents. In particular, when he displayed his saber technique, it was like a gust of wind sweeping away fallen leaves. If Lu Ye's saber was sharp and aggressive, then Hu Ping's saber was violent and fierce. However, after fighting with Lu Yi, a 5th-order cultivator, Hu Ping was shocked to find that he could not display his saber technique at all. His opponent's spirit artifact was broken, but Hu Ping's speed and strength were not something he could compete with. After a few slashes, Yang Kai was unable to block his opponent's fierce attacks. His body kept retreating as the web between his thumb and forefinger cracked. He felt like he wasn't fighting a 5th-order cultivator at all, but a ferocious beast covered in blood qi. The pressure was too strong. With a clang, Hu Ping's body leaned back, and the spirit artifact in his hand almost flew out. He wanted to stabilize his body, but his foot slipped. Too many people had died in this ring, and the blood of the challengers had dyed the entire Golden Light Peak red. Hu Ping, who had just stepped onto the stage, suffered a big loss because of this. A bright saber light flashed, and Hu Ping forcibly stabilized his body. He wanted to block with his saber, but the saber light bypassed his spirit artifact and slashed down fiercely. At this moment, it was too late to block. Hu Ping also had a lot of experience in life and death battles, so he steeled his heart and slashed his saber towards Lu Ye's neck. The battle had only started for 10 breaths, but the two sides were already in a life and death situation, causing exclamations from all around. There was no panic in Hu Ping's eyes, because he knew that Lu Ye's broken blade couldn't do anything to him. His opponent's spirit weapon was indeed of good quality, but since it was broken, it couldn't display its original power, so it wasn't much of a threat to him. However, this slash of his was different. It was aimed at Lu Ye's neck. If the other party did not activate that defensive spirit pattern, this slash would be able to determine life and death. Just as he expected, when his spirit weapon slashed at Lu Ye's neck, the spirit inscriptions there blocked the attack. However, he did not stop. Instead, he continued to press forward, using this opportunity to consume his opponent's spirit energy. However, the pain in his chest gave him a shock. He spat out blood, and Hu Ping could not care about anything else. He hurriedly used the force of the chop to jump back. Lowering his head to look, he saw that there was a foot-long wound on his chest, and the armor he wore had been directly cut open, losing all of its spiritual light. Hu Ping's scalp suddenly felt numb. He couldn't figure out what was going on. The reason he dared to take Lu Ye's blade head-on was because the spirit weapon in Lu Ye's hand was broken, greatly reducing its power. The second reason was that he had an armor protecting him. Although the quality of this armor was not high, it still had some defensive power. Several times, he had relied on this armor to escape danger. However, this time, the armor had been cut open, unable to provide him with any protection. Wasn't his opponent's spirit weapon broken? How could it still be so sharp? All kinds of thoughts churned in his mind, but there was no time to think because Lu Yi had already taken advantage of Hu Ping's distraction to stab out with his blade. Fiery red spiritual power clung to the broken long saber, containing an indestructible power. Hu Ping roared and raised his saber to block. Clanging sounds rang out again as the two of them exchanged blows. However, Hu Ping had been distracted and was now completely suppressed. He felt that not only was his opponent's offensive fierce, but it was also endless. After a dozen breaths of time, Hu Ping suddenly froze in place. He raised the large blade in his hand but was powerless to swing it down. He looked down at his chest, his eyes full of fear. At his chest, the broken blade had pierced through the broken armor without any hindrance. Close at hand, their eyes met. Lu Yi looked at the enemy in front of him with a calm expression. "I am called Lu Yi. Blue blood sex Lu Yi." With a kick, Hu Ping flew far away and fell to the ground, motionless. Lu Yi gasped for breath and staggered back to his previous position. He sat down cross-legged, threw a spirit pill into his mouth, and lowered his head. Above the golden light, there was still no sound. After a while, Hu Ping's senior brother came forward to check and found that Hu Ping was deader than dead. Whispers began to ring out, and gradually became noisy. Hu Ping had also been defeated. In this battle where Myriad Devil Ridge was infinitely close to victory, Hu Ping had been killed. One had to know that Myriad Devil Ridge was prepared to end this dispute in this battle. No matter who saw it, Lu Yi, whose spirit weapon was broken, was no match for Hu Ping. But in fact, Hu Ping had only taken 2 slashes from Lu Yi before dying. Lu Yi had also been slashed twice by him, but both were neutralized by the defensive spirit rune. Some cultivators had already seen the problem. It was still the spirit weapon. Although it was broken, it did not seem to affect its power. The Myriad Devil Ridge cultivator called Xian had a grave expression and his face was slightly pale. He was secretly glad that Lu Yi had chosen Hu Ping. Otherwise, he might have been the one to fall in this battle. Everyone thought that Lu Ye's fangs had been broken, but who knew that those broken fangs were still as sharp and unstoppable? Looking at the figure sitting there quietly with his head lowered, as if he could fall at any time, Xian sighed softly. Although Hu Ping had been killed, it would not affect him too much. The next battle would be him. If he lost, then only the people from the Sacred Flame sect would be left. That guy from the Sacred Flame sect was weaker than him and Hu Ping, so there was no hope for him. So, no matter what, he could not lose this battle. If he wanted to win, he could not be cut by his opponent. The lethality of that spirit weapon was too terrifying, but he was also a weapon refiner. When he fought in close combat, he could not avoid it. He had a headache. Before he could come up with a countermeasure, someone from Myriad Devil Ridge reminded him, "Time's up." Li Baxin glared fiercely. When Lu Yi began to rest, the incense that he had lit went out. Lu Yi, who had been resting with his head lowered, raised his head again. Under the gaze of thousands of eyes, he stood up with his broken saber as support, his body staggering and his footsteps unsteady. The group of Myriad Devil Ridge cultivators' eyelids twitched. Lu Yi looked like he could fall at any time, but it turned out that once this guy started fighting, he began to become more energetic. If they had not seen him fight more than 40 battles in a row with their own eyes, they would have thought that this guy was just putting on an act. No one knew what kind of faith and willpower was supporting this trivial fifth-order cultivator to not fall, allowing him to remain invincible in the blood-soaked arena. Xian walked out and the two sides introduced themselves as usual. Lu Ye's ears were buzzing, caused by overdraft of his energy. He could not hear what the others were saying, but it did not matter. Big Senior Sister would remember it. Kong. The moment spirit chi exploded, the two figures rushed towards each other. This Myriad Devil Ridge cultivator was not frightened by Lu Ye's terrifying record and did not even take a defensive stance. Instead, he took the initiative to fight. As a fellow weapon refiner, they both knew that offense was the best defense. The sound of spirit weapons colliding could be heard as the two figures constantly moved around in the arena. Sparks flew everywhere as they collided. Everyone from the Myriad Demons Ridge felt their hearts in their throats. They knew that if they lost this battle, they would really have no chance. Although there was still the Sacred Flame sect left, that person from the Sacred Flame sect was not as strong as Hu Ping or Xian. If they were to fight against Lu Yi, only death would await them. 3 breaths, 5 breaths, 10 breaths, 20 breaths, 50 breaths. The Myriad Devil Ridge cultivators who were nervously watching the battle breathed a sigh of relief. The situation had stabilized. All of them secretly praised Lu Yi. As expected of a second-grade sect, Lu Ye's foundation was indeed stronger than the others. None of the previous challengers had been able to fight Lu Yi for such a long time without showing any signs of weakness. Some people had lasted for a long time under Lu Ye's hands, but they had only been chased around. They had been focused on consuming Lu Ye's spirit chi and laying the foundation for victory for their successors. This was the first time someone had been able to fight Lu Yi head-on for so long. With this kind of strength, he already had the capital to fight above his realm. At this moment, the more Lu Yi fought, the more awake he became. Although his ears were still buzzing and there were even some blurry scenes flashing before his eyes, the pressure from the other side told him that this was an opponent whose strength and speed were not inferior to his. To deal with such an opponent, he could only end the battle quickly. Lu Yi knew his situation. He did not have much spirit chi left. If he continued to fight like this, he would definitely not be able to hold on. Once his spirit chi was exhausted and he could not defeat his opponent, he would only be waiting for death. As this thought flashed through his mind, he did not block or dodge the opponent's attack. Instead, he slashed out with his saber. This attack gave the Myriad Demon Ridge cultivator a fright. Lu Yi dared to take his attack, but he did not dare to take Lu Ye's saber. The many lives he had taken before told him that the spirit artifact in Lu Ye's hand was ridiculously strong. It was not a spirit artifact that a low-level cultivator could possess. He hurriedly dodged. His rhythm was instantly disrupted. Originally, he and Lu Yi were evenly matched, but when he began to defend, he lost his initial sharpness and his hands and feet became tied. As one retreated and one advanced, Lu Yi had already slashed out 7 or 8 times. Although he was not able to do his best, the situation had already begun to reverse. Lu Yi gradually gained the upper hand and slowly suppressed his opponent. The man obviously knew that this could not go on. Just as he was thinking of countermeasures, there was a cracking sound and his hand suddenly became lighter. Looking up, he was shocked. His spirit artifact had been cut in half. Lu Yi had fought more than 40 battles in a row. Other than his spirit artifact saber being cut in half by the myriad demon ridge, he had never cut an enemy's spirit artifact in half. The sharpness spirit inscription was indeed powerful, but the spirit artifact itself was also very sturdy. His previous opponents had either been killed by a few slashes or avoided a direct confrontation with him. He naturally did not have this opportunity. But the person in front of him was different. Previously, when the two sides fought, every time their spirit artifacts collided. Even if Lu Yi did not activate the sharpness spirit inscription every time, his opponent's spirit artifact would not be able to withstand it. The saber slashed down, bringing with it a spray of blood. Chapter 166. On the stage, Xian quickly retreated, but a wound still appeared on his chest and abdomen. Opposite him, Lu Yi rushed forward and slashed again. Xian rolled on the ground and narrowly avoided the attack. When he got up, his body was covered in blood and soil. He was in an extremely sorry state. Just as he steadied himself, he felt another gust of wind behind his head. He pounced forward like a mad dog and felt a chill on his head. A large piece of his scalp had been cut off. Falling to the ground with difficulty, Xian knew that he was going to die this time. He really couldn't figure out why his opponent's spirit artifact was not affected when it was broken, but his spirit artifact was broken and it was like a decoration in his hand. There was no way he could dodge the next attack, but his pride as a second-grade sect made him grit his teeth and not shout. He didn't shout, but someone shouted for him, "Admit defeat." It was one of Xian's senior sisters. She knew that if she didn't shout, her junior brother would die. Even if she was unwilling, even if she knew that after shouting, Myriad Demon Ridge would no longer have a chance, she couldn't just watch her junior brother die like this. Lu Yi, who was chasing after him, stopped and looked at Xian, who stood up in a sorry state. Deafening cheers came from the Grand Heaven Alliance camp. The cheers of thousands of people gathered together and made the entire Golden Light Peak tremble. Lu Yi, who was dizzy, was confused. He walked back with his broken saber and looked at Li Baxian and Wei Yang. "Are you done?" Grand Heaven Alliance was celebrating as if it was the new year, so it was inevitable that he would misunderstand. Li Baxian smiled. "Not yet?" Lu Yi sat down cross-legged and threw a spirit pill into his mouth. He switched his secret art to gluttony meal to speed up the refinement of the pill. What was there to be happy about? "There's one last match." Li Baxian's voice came from behind Lu Yi. "Do you see that guy with the flame mark on his forehead? He's from Sacred Flame Sect. He's your only opponent. But don't be afraid, Sacred Flame Sect is full of Dharma cultivators. If it was a battle in the wild, a sixth-order Dharma cultivator would be a threat to Lu Yi, but in this limited arena, the threat of a Dharma cultivator to Lu Yi was greatly reduced." Li Baxian was incomparably glad that he had agreed on the size of the arena when he signed the Heaven Fate contract with the Myriad Devil Ridge. The Dharma cultivators sent by the Myriad Devil Ridge died the fastest. Lu Yi's speed was too fast. He arrived in front of them in a few steps. Those Dharma cultivators could only use 1 or 2 spells. Those who were stronger could use 3 or even 4 spells. However, Lu Yi had the defensive spirit tattoo. As long as his eyesight was good enough, he could easily block those spells. Once he got close to them, those Dharma cultivators could only wait for death or admit defeat. Lu Yi raised his eyes and looked towards Myriad Demon Ridge. Sure enough, he saw a sixth-order cultivator with a flame mark on his forehead standing there, waiting. "Looks like this is my last opponent." He didn't let his guard down because of this. He silently checked his own condition. He didn't have much spiritual power left, only a little more than 10%. Even if he had the time for a stick of incense to burn, he could barely recover 20%. If he used it sparingly, it should be enough to deal with the last battle. "Senior brother, can we go home after the fight?" Lu Yi asked softly. "Let's go home after the fight," Li Baxian replied. "Got it?" Lu Yi lowered his head and tried his best to recover his physical strength. The Grand Heaven Alliance was still in a jubilant mood. After Hu Ping and Xian, who were both disciples from 2nd and 3rd rank sects, had died and admitted defeat, the remaining Sacred Fire Sect Dharma cultivators were no match for Lu Yi. From the Grand Heaven Alliance's point of view, Lu Yi had already secured victory. In contrast, Myriad Demon Ridge's side was gloomy. Everyone's expression was ugly. It was no wonder they were like this. In the past 2 days, Myriad Demon Ridge's side had taken a huge advantage. Except for the first battle where a 5th Order body cultivator went up to test the waters, the rest were all 6th Order cultivators. However, in just 2 days, they were defeated by Lu Yi from Blue Blood Sect. The only remaining Sacred Flame Sect disciple was doomed to be unable to do anything. It could be said that in this game between the two camps, the Myriad Devil Ridge had lost completely. Those who died were secondary. Fighting against the Grand Heaven Alliance would definitely result in deaths. The main reason was that they had no way to explain to their sections. The cultivators of the Myriad Devil Ridge who came here could almost imagine how furious their sects would be when the news was spread back to their sects. The experts from the Myriad Devil Ridge who were on the Spirit Stream list approached the cultivator from the Sacred Flame Sect who was preparing to fight. They whispered something to him, and the cultivator from the Sacred Flame Sect slowly shook his head, causing the experts' faces to darken. An incense stick of time seemed to have passed in the blink of an eye. On the top of the golden light, Lu Yi stood up with the help of his broken saber for the last time. He walked up the ring step by step and quietly looked at the Sacred Flame Sect cultivator. The other party stood in front of the Myriad Demon Ridge camp with his head lowered. He didn't do anything. This situation caused many people from Grand Heaven Alliance to hiss. Some shouted for Lu Yi to go up and kill him, while others shouted for the Sacred Flame Sect cultivator to admit defeat and go home to plant sweet potatoes. The Myriad Demon Ridge lost, but they didn't want to lose. Some of the more irritable people began to curse at the Grand Heaven Alliance people. The scene was chaotic for a moment. If it weren't for the restriction of the Heaven's secret contract, the two sides would have had a chaotic battle to determine the winner. Just as the Myriad Demon Ridge people were getting impatient from waiting, someone finally walked up the ring slowly. The noise suddenly subsided. Several thousand pairs of eyes stared at the cultivator who walked up the ring. However, that person wasn't the Sacred Flame Sect disciple who was preparing to fight, but another female cultivator. Li Baxian's gaze immediately sharpened. What is the Myriad Demon Ridge doing? It couldn't be helped. Although the female cultivator who walked up was also from the Sacred Flame Sect, he could tell that she wasn't a 6th Order cultivator just by looking at the spirit light on her body. She was a 7th Order cultivator. The Spirit Stream list masters from the Myriad Demon Ridge obviously didn't expect this to happen. The Heaven's secret contract had already stipulated that the highest cultivation level of the challenger was the 6th Order. The appearance of a 7th Order cultivator was undoubtedly a violation of the rules. Openly challenging the Heaven's secret contract was an extremely daring act. Once the Heaven's secret contract started to punish, all the masters who left their blood fingerprints on the Heaven's secret contract and the sects behind them would have to attack the Sacred Flame Sect, regardless of whether the Myriad Demon Ridge was willing or not. Ever since the Spirit Stream battlefield, no one had dared to violate the Heaven's secret contract. Even if the Sacred Flame Sect's people were crazy, they wouldn't do such an unwise thing. They were playing with the fate of their entire sect. Although Li Baxian's gaze was sharp and his tone was cold, he was actually quite happy in his heart. If the Sacred Flame Sect really wanted to play like this, it would be beneficial to his side. He muttered in his heart, have these guys really lost their minds because of their sacred flame? The masters from Grand Heaven Alliance all thought so. Otherwise, they wouldn't have just sat there quietly. They had already stopped the 7th Order female cultivator when she stepped onto the stage. What are you doing? On the Myriad Demon Ridge's side, the master in the top 20 on the list glared at the Sacred Flame Sect's steward and gritted his teeth as he shouted. Even if the 6th Order cultivator wasn't their match, they couldn't break the Heaven's secret contract. Otherwise, the consequences would be unimaginable. Just as he finished speaking, lightning flashed and thunder rumbled in the sky. Thick dark clouds appeared out of thin air and gathered above the golden light, covering the sky. The Heaven's secret had already begun to surge. The Myriad Demon Ridge's side was all shocked. The cultivators beside the Sacred Flame Sect quickly retreated. In an instant, a large area around the Sacred Flame Sect's people was emptied. The aura of death pressed down on them, but the group from the Sacred Flame sect remained calm. Disregarding everything else, just their courage to face the mysteries of the heavens was indeed admirable. However, this could not change the fact that they were about to die. Blazing sacred flame, burn my body. As long as the fire in my heart is not extinguished, I will not fear death. On the Sacred Flame sect's side, the steward with the highest cultivation lowered his head and chanted softly. On the ring, the seventh order female cultivator also lowered her head and chanted, "Blazing sacred flame, burn my body. As long as the fire in my heart is not extinguished, I will not fear death." As she chanted, she raised her right thumb and pointed at a spot below her chest. Then she pressed down hard. "This is..." Libashian suddenly realized something and his face changed slightly. Pooh. There seemed to be a soft sound, like the sound of a balloon being punctured. Accompanied by this soft sound, the female cultivator's figure staggered slightly. At the same time, a violent wave of chi swept out in all directions with her as the center. The female cultivator groaned and a trace of pain flashed across her eyes. At the same time, her aura suddenly weakened. "Destroy your own spirit aperture." Libashian gritted his teeth and shouted. Everyone who saw the female cultivator's actions, whether they were from Grand Heaven Alliance or Myriad Demon Ridge, all changed their expressions. Destroying one's own spirit aperture was easy to say, but difficult to do. Once one's spirit aperture was destroyed, one's future was destined to be hopeless and would be stuck in the spirit stream realm. Just looking at Libashian, one could see how amazing he was. Even the North Profound Sword Sect's sword master admired him. However, with his spirit aperture destroyed, he had been stuck in the spirit stream realm for more than 10 years. Moreover, his cultivation had stopped at the 8th order because one of his spirit apertures was destroyed, making it difficult for him to form the last minor heavenly cycle and advance to the 9th order. Of course, a destroyed spirit aperture could be repaired, but the price to pay was too great. No one was willing to try it easily. At this moment, in front of thousands of cultivators from both sides, this female cultivator from the Sacred Flame sect destroyed one of her spirit apertures without batting an eyelid. It was as if she was pulling off a strand of hair. This decisiveness and ruthlessness towards herself made the thousands of cultivators' scalps go numb. As expected of a madwoman from the Sacred Flame sect, she could actually do such a thing. After a brief moment of shock, everyone raised their heads to look at the surging crisis in the sky. Originally, when this female cultivator stood on the stage, the heavenly mystery began to surge rapidly, as if it was about to punish her. The thunder and lightning in the thick dark clouds made people's hearts palpitate. However, when the female cultivator destroyed one of her spirit apertures and her cultivation fell to the 6th order, the dark clouds above the golden light quickly dissipated. The surging heavenly mystery also dissipated completely. Under the sunlight, the blue sky was clear. The Myriad Demon Ridge side was beaming with joy. Chapter 167. Good. A loud shout rang out. It was the Myriad Demon Ridge Master who was ranked in the top 20 of the Spirit Stream list. When the female cultivator stood on the stage, he also thought that the Sacred Flame sect's lunatics had lost their minds and wanted to challenge Heaven's secret. Who would have thought that they would cripple their own spirit apertures? This was undoubtedly a loophole in the Heaven's secret contract, but judging from Heaven's secret's reaction, this loophole left everyone speechless. After crippling one of her spirit apertures, the female cultivator fell from the 7th order realm to the 6th order realm. Naturally, it was in line with the Heaven's secret contract. Now that Heaven's secret had retreated, even if the Grand Heaven Alliance had a bellyful of complaints, they had nowhere to vent. A 6th order realm cultivator who had just fallen from the 7th order realm was naturally stronger than an ordinary 6th order realm cultivator. This was the last hope of the Myriad Demon Ridge. Kong. Just as the Myriad Demon Ridge Master finished his sentence, Lu Yi, wrapped in blood chi, pounced towards the female cultivator from the Sacred Flame sect with murderous intent as usual. He had killed a 6th order realm cultivator who had fallen from the 7th order realm when he had just advanced to the 5th order realm. Although he wasn't in his best condition at the moment and didn't even know what was going on, Since the female cultivator stood on the stage in front of him, then he would kill her. The distance of 20 meters was quickly closed. Lu Ye's figure was like a mad beast, bringing with it a strong oppressive aura. His bloodshot eyes were clear, reflecting the figure of the female cultivator in front of him. 10 meters, 5 meters. Fire-red spirit energy began to climb on the long saber. Even if Lu Ye's spirit energy wasn't as pure as before, and even if his spirit artifact was broken, the sharpness spirit inscriptions still made the saber invincible. The female cultivator from the Sacred Flame sect didn't dodge because she knew that she couldn't beat Lu Yi in speed. She was willing to cripple her own spirit aperture to fight with Lu Yi, so she naturally had a way to deal with him. She raised her hands and her spirit energy surged. A heart-shaped pendant on her chest floated up and released a fiery red light. As she poured her spirit energy into the pendant, a layer of protection suddenly spread out and wrapped around her. The barrier was fiery red in color, as if lava was constantly flowing on it. It covered the woman's figure. When it appeared, the temperature of the entire Golden Light Summit rose rapidly. The ground that was originally dyed red with blood was roasted dry, emitting an unpleasant smell. Molten core. Someone from the Grand Heaven Alliance exclaimed as he recognized the origin of the pendant. This was a defensive spiritual artifact unique to the Sacred Flame sect. Only 5 of them could be forged in each generation, and only their holy sons or holy daughters were qualified to possess them. It had an extremely strong defensive ability. In a battle between opponents of the same level, it could be said that as long as the wearer's spiritual power was not depleted, the defensive spiritual artifact would not be broken, unless the difference in strength was too great and the layer of protection was broken in one go. However, when faced with an enemy whose strength was too great, any defensive spiritual artifact would be useless. Being able to possess the molten core meant that this female cultivator was the holy daughter of the Sacred Flame sect. The group of cultivators from the Grand Heaven Alliance cursed in their hearts. The people from the Sacred Flame sect were indeed lunatics. A holy daughter was actually willing to destroy her own spiritual acupoints and lower her own cultivation in order to win a battle. At this moment, Lu Yi had already rushed to the layer of protection. The scorching heat hit him in the face, drying his mouth and tongue. He did not care and slashed down with his saber. In the previous battles, it was not that no one had taken out a defensive spiritual artifact, but those defensive spiritual artifacts were usually not of much use and would be broken by him with a few slashes. However, this time, when he slashed at the fiery red barrier, he immediately felt the difference. The barrier was not hard, but it gave off an extremely tough feeling. When he slashed with his saber that was enhanced with sharpness, it was as if he had slashed at a piece of rubber. Without hesitation, he slashed a second time, then a third time, a fourth time. The hand holding the saber was already burned, but Lu Yi did not seem to feel it. Under thousands of gazes, he slashed wildly. Oh no! Li Baxian's face was solemn. Although he could not see what the holy daughter of the Sacred Flame sect was doing behind the barrier, he was sure that she was preparing a powerful and wide-range spell technique. The tragic deaths of the Dharma cultivators who fought Lu Yi made the myriad Devil Ridge understand one thing. In this arena, it was very difficult for Dharma cultivators to pose any threat to Lu Yi. This was because Lu Yi had a defensive spirit pattern that could be activated at will. The defensive power of this spirit pattern was extremely outstanding, and he could easily block every spell attack. If the holy daughter of the Sacred Flame sect really fought against Lu Yi like those Dharma cultivators before, even if she fell from the 7th order, she would not be able to last long. There was only one way to win against Lu Yi by relying on spell techniques, and that was to use a wide-range spell technique so that Lu Yi's defensive spirit inscription could not defend against it. An ordinary 7th order cultivator was not qualified to cultivate a spell technique of this scale. One needed to be at least in the 9th order to do so, but this was the holy daughter of the Sacred Flame sect, so her talent was definitely extraordinary. That was why she directly urged the defensive power of the Kiln Fire Core to ensure that her spell technique would not be disturbed. In the arena, Lu Yi also vaguely noticed this, so the speed at which he swung his saber increased a lot. At the same time, inside the flame barrier, the holy daughter of the sacred flame sect, who had a calm expression even after destroying her spirit acupoints, had a slight change in her expression. Because she felt the spirit chi in her body rapidly decreasing, which caused a ripple in her tranquil state of mind. She was secretly surprised by the strength of her opponent's attack. One had to know that although the Kiln Fire Core's defensive power was excellent, its drawbacks were also obvious, and that was the huge consumption. This kind of consumption was linked to her spirit chi. It wasn't that this layer of defense could not be broken, but that it was frantically repairing itself while being attacked, and the power to repair itself came from her spirit chi. The stronger the attack, the faster her spirit chi would be consumed. She had once fought against a 7th Order cultivator from Grand Heaven Alliance, and the other party's attack on the Kiln Fire Core didn't consume her spirit chi as fast as this. Every time her opponent slashed out, a portion of her spirit chi would disappear out of thin air. After a few slashes, 10% of her spirit chi would be gone. That broken saber was really sharp. Fortunately, she wasn't prepared to fight a protracted battle with Lu Yi. She only used one spirit technique to deal with him. Her spirit chi reserves continued to decrease, and in just 10 breaths, she only had 60% of her spirit chi left. Victory and defeat had been decided. She gently exhaled and gently pushed her hands outwards. Following this action, a scorching and violent aura suddenly spread out. The remaining 60% of spiritual energy in her body was like a flood that had broken through a dam, crazily flowing out. At the same time, outside the magma-like barrier, Lu Yi was rapidly retreating. From the very beginning, a strong sense of crisis had surged in his heart, as if there was a voice screaming in his ears, telling him to hurry and retreat, or he would die. Almost at the moment he retreated, the barrier in front of him was broken. It wasn't broken by him, but by a violent force from the inside. A fiery red color instantly filled Lu Ye's field of vision, accompanied by an aura that seemed capable of burning all things. This aura embraced him and wrapped him up. The 200-meter-wide ring was filled with raging flames in an instant. These flames weren't ordinary flames, but instead more like diluted magma. This sudden change caused the cultivators watching the battle near the ring to quickly retreat. For a moment, no one could see what was happening inside the ring. But it was undeniable that a 5th Order cultivator who was enveloped by such a spirit technique had no chance of surviving. Just as Li Baxian was about to move, Wei Yang grabbed him. "Don't be impulsive, little junior brother isn't dead." Although she couldn't see the situation inside the ring, she could feel that the aura of her little junior brother hadn't been extinguished yet. She was extremely sensitive to the aura of life, so as long as it wasn't extinguished, she could save him. But at this time, if Li Baxian rushed out, although he could snatch her little junior brother back, the situation would not be optimistic. Hearing Wei Yang's words, Li Baxian resisted the urge to act. The scorching heat on the ring slowly dissipated, and the originally muddy golden dome had been burned dry at this moment, with some glass-like crystals even forming. The hazy situation began to become clear. On one side of the ring, the sacred flame sect saintess face was pale without a trace of blood, and there was even blood flowing out of her 7 orifices. Her aura was extremely weak, as if she could collapse at any moment. Her consumption was too great. The Kiln Fire Core's protection had consumed 30 to 40% of her spiritual energy, and that large-scale spirit technique had almost drained her dry. Strictly speaking, that spirit technique wasn't something a cultivator of her level should be able to use. She couldn't control it perfectly, and there was a great possibility that it would backfire on her, but in order to deal with Lu Yi, she had no other choice. Fortunately, her willpower was strong enough to barely complete that spirit technique, but because of this, she was like a lamp that had run out of oil. The backlash she suffered wasn't great, but it still caused her serious injuries. At this moment, her spirit acupoints were being burned by the sacred flame, and if she didn't receive timely treatment, even if she didn't die, she would become a cripple. She raised her listless eyes and looked forward, wanting to see what happened to her opponent. In the twisting heat wave, a figure emitting heat from his entire body brazenly rushed out. His naked upper body was covered in festering burns, and even his hair was burned into a mess. The clothes on his lower body were the same, clinging to his flesh. With every step he took, a bright red footprint appeared on the ground, and under the high temperature, the blood quickly dried up. The Sacred Flame sect Saintess' expression finally changed. He wasn't dead. How could he not be dead? Her opponent did have defensive spirit runes, but even if he did, he shouldn't have been able to block her spirit technique. As long as he was still in the ring, he would undoubtedly die. At this moment, the Saintess almost suspected that someone had secretly helped Lu Yi. But since the experts on her side didn't say anything, it meant that this possibility wasn't high. The enemy wasn't dead, and he was still rushing towards her. Although he wasn't fast and his figure was staggering, the distance between them was rapidly shrinking. She could foresee that when he rushed in front of her, it would be the time of her death. Chapter 168. The Sacred Flame sect Saintess clenched her teeth and stretched out her small hand. She pushed the little remaining spirit energy in her body, and a red light immediately appeared on her palm. It was the convergence of her spirit energy. When this ball of red light appeared, the power of the large area of effect spell from before quickly gathered. The temperature of the scorching golden light dropped sharply. In the blink of an eye, a humanoid figure made purely of flames appeared in front of her. Fire Giant! Exclamations came from Grand Heaven Alliance's side. This was clearly the name of the spell cast by the Sacred Flame sect Saintess. This was also a spell that shouldn't be cast by a 7th order cultivator, which showed how high the Saintess' talent was. However, perhaps because her cultivation wasn't enough, the Fire Giant, which should have been majestic and at least several meters tall, was now only the size of an ordinary person. This Fire Giant didn't have legs, and the lower half of its body was purely made of flowing flames. Even its facial features weren't clear, but its figure was very burly. As soon as it appeared, it stood in front of the Saintess. After casting this spell, the Sacred Flame sect Saintess knelt on the ground with a thud. This time, she was truly a lamp that had run out of oil. It had to be said that she was a smart woman. At the last moment, she used the last of her spiritual power to summon a fire giant instead of using a spell like the Fire Serpent technique, because spells could be easily dodged. Once Lu Yi dodged her last attack, she could only wait for death. Her mind felt like it was being pierced by needles, and the blood that flowed out from her 7 orifices had turned a dark red. Although she was kneeling on the arena stage, she still looked up at Lu Yi, her mind controlling the fire giant to meet him. When the heat wave hit, Lu Yi instinctively raised his broken saber and slashed. The reason why he was able to survive the attack of that spell was all thanks to the defensive spirit rune. When the power of that spell hit him, he activated a defensive spirit rune that could cover his whole body. This caused his already small amount of spiritual power to be almost completely depleted. Fortunately, his opponent's spell didn't last long, otherwise, he would have been burned to death. Right now, he could still activate the last spirit rune, which he left for his opponent, not this inexplicable thing in front of him. His vision was blood red, and he couldn't see anything clearly. The Sacred Flame sect Saintess was like a lamp that had run out of oil, and Lu Yi was also an arrow at the end of its flight. Around the arena, the masters from both camps watched this final battle with dignified expressions. No one had expected that a fight between trivial 5th or 6th order cultivators could be so fierce. At this moment, the two figures fighting in the ring looked extremely comical. This was because Lu Yi no longer had his previous fierceness and ferocity. Every slash of his blade seemed weak and powerless. Every step he took, he staggered as if he could fall at any moment. As for the fire giant, it was also a little dazed and slow to react. This was the reason why the Sacred Flame sect's Saintess consciousness had started to blur. Although the fire giant was summoned by her power, it did not have any thoughts and needed her to control it. As a result, the battle in the arena looked like a fight between children. No one laughed because of this. They were only secretly shocked at the tenacity of the wills of both sides. The group of experts on the Spirit Stream list asked themselves if they could have done something like this when their cultivation bases were at the 5th or 6th level. If these two didn't die today, their names would surely appear on the Spirit Stream list. The childlike battle continued. It wasn't intense, But as time passed, the fire giant summoned by the spell began to become unstable. Even its size was slowly shrinking. The myriad demon ridge side became nervous. Now that they had reached this point, they couldn't afford to fall short. Burning sacred fire, burn my body. At first, it was only one person chanting, but soon, many sacred flame sect cultivators began chanting in unison. Their voices grew louder and louder. In the arena, the saintess, who was already unconscious, suddenly burst out with her last bit of strength. Blood flowed from her eyes. The fire giant fighting Lu Yi suddenly expanded and punched out. With a crash, the remaining half of the broken blade in Lu Ye's hand shattered, and he was sent flying by the punch, crashing to the ground. Along with him, the hope of Grand Heaven Alliance fell. After sending Lu Yi flying, the fire giant suddenly collapsed, turning into specks of light and disappearing. It had exhausted its strength. The saintess of the Sacred Flame sect gasped for breath and struggled to get up from the ground. Step by step, she walked toward Lu Yi, who was lying motionless on the ground. She softly chanted the teachings of the Sacred Flame sect, and her painful expression slowly calmed down. Li Baxian's expression became serious and nervous. Wei Yang also secretly urged her spirit force. At the same time, the powerhouses of the Myriad Devil Ridge all stared at the two of them. If the two of them made any movements, they would be attacked by those powerhouses. At that moment, the atmosphere became extremely tense. In the arena, the saintess, who had walked halfway, slowly took out a long sword from her storage bag. Just this action seemed to have exhausted all her strength. It should be an ordinary sword, because it didn't have any spiritual light, but it was enough. She didn't have the strength to lift the sword, so she dragged it in front of Lu Yi. She wobbled a few times and slowly stood still. Looking down at her opponent, who was burned and covered in wounds, the saintess, who had never smiled since she started cultivating, revealed a smile. She wanted to say to her opponent, "I won." But when she opened her mouth, she couldn't even make a sound. She held the sword hilt with both hands and pointed the sword at Lu Ye's chest. She slowly raised it. The already tense atmosphere around the arena collapsed at this moment. Many people began to silently urge their spiritual power. Lu Yi, who was lying motionless on the ground, suddenly raised a hand. His palm was facing the woman standing beside him, as if he wanted to block the sword that was about to stab him. His dry and cracked lips moved, and a soft voice came out. "Fire. Phoenix." Phoenix, fire-red spiritual power surged in her palm. The smile on the saintess' face immediately froze. She used the last of her strength to stab down with the sword in her hand. With a flapping sound, a fire bird as fat as a quail flew out and crashed into the saintess' chest, exploding with a loud bang. With a scream, the saintess was sent flying. Her chest was scorched, and she fell to the ground without a sound. Everyone was shocked speechless by this sudden change. The side that was supposed to be dead for sure still had the strength to counterattack, and it was a spell. In the final moment, the spiritual cultivator raised her sword and the weapon cultivator cast her spell. Victory and defeat had been decided. Life and death had been decided. Two figures rushed onto the arena at almost the same time. The sound of swords rang out. Li Baxian stood in front of Lu Yi. Behind him, hundreds of sword lights surged back and forth. Each sword light was a flying sword. Sword Chi soared into the sky. The sword cultivators' killing intent rose. Anyone who dared to act rashly would be attacked by the hundreds of flying swords. Wei Yang held the badly mutilated Lu Yi in her arms and checked his injuries. Suddenly, a ferocious spiritual wave surged from behind the myriad demons' ridge. Countless people turned pale with fright. When they turned their heads to look back, they saw a figure that was dozens of feet tall slowly straightening its body. The figure was so huge that it covered the clouds and the sun. It was the figure of a cloud giant. It was a spell. In the entire Spirit Stream battlefield, there were no more than 3 people who could use the cloud giant's spell on such a scale. "Everyone, don't move. You'll die." A crisp voice came from the cloud giant. Only then did the people from the Myriad Demon Ridge see the figure of a woman sitting on the shoulder of the cloud giant. The contrast between the small figure and the large cloud giant was very obvious, but no one dared to underestimate the figure. Because she was the spirit stream ranking leader, a monster who had occupied first place for more than 10 years. A myriad demon ridge cultivator gritted his teeth and shouted. No one knew when she had been hiding nearby. Previously, there was news that she was blocking the entrance of the 100 Refinements Valley's encampment. Now, it seemed that she had already escaped. After all, even if she was the spirit stream ranking leader, it was impossible for her to block a 4th-rank sect's encampment for so long. Senior brother, I'm here to help you. Feng Yuechan raised her hand and greeted Li Baxin enthusiastically. At this moment, Li Baxin didn't have the time to correct her. He nodded, kill whoever dares to move. But Feng Yuechan responded crisply. On the stage, Wei Yang had already fed Lu Yi a spirit pill and an unknown medicinal liquid to maintain his vitality. Lu Ye's lips squirmed, but Wei Yang didn't hear clearly. She moved her ear closer and whispered, Little junior brother, what did you say? Are you done? Lu Yi asked with difficulty. Wei Yang nodded. Lu Yi couldn't open one eye, and his other eye was only a slit. He wanted to laugh, but he couldn't. His tense mind relaxed, and his head tilted to the side as he fainted. Wei Yang panicked and hurriedly checked him. After confirming that Lu Yi was just too tired, she relaxed and looked at Li Baxin's back, returned to the sect. Li Baxin called out, Yuechun, send senior sister and little junior brother to Azure Sea Mountain. Feng Yuechun responded. The several hundred feet tall cloud giant bent down and reached out a hand towards the stage. Under the giant shadow, the cultivators of Myriad Devil Ridge scattered like birds and beasts. The giant hand fell beside the stage, and Wei Yang jumped up with Lu Yi in her arms. After gently putting Lu Yi down, she suddenly felt something beside her. Turning her head, she found that it was a large snow-white tiger. She knew that this was Lu Ye's pet beast. Seeing the worry in the tiger's eyes, she comforted, Don't worry, with me here, he won't die. The cloud giant raised its hand and gently held the 2 people and 1 tiger in its palm. Then, under Feng Yuechan's control, it turned around and rushed towards Azure Sea Mountain's encampment. Its speed was incredibly fast. Fellow Taoists of the Myriad Devil Ridge, please wait here for the time it takes for an incense stick to burn. After that, you can do whatever you want. However, if you act rashly before then, don't blame me, Li Baxin, for killing you. Li Baxin's voice faintly sounded, but the 100 flying swords behind him told all the cultivators of Myriad Devil Ridge that this guy wasn't joking. Yan Xing, who had been staring at Li Baxin, had a serious expression. Only today did he discover that Li Baxin's imperial sword technique had reached such a terrifying level. When they fought before, this guy didn't even use his full strength. Chapter 169. The grand battle on Golden Light Summit came to an end. Under the witness of thousands of cultivators from both camps, Jade Blood Sect's Lu Yi, a 5th-order spirit stream realm cultivator, had fought 43 battles with the Myriad Demon Ridge. He had not lost a single battle, and in the final battle he had killed a Sacred Flame sect saintess who had destroyed her own spirit aperture, causing her cultivation to drop from the 7th order. The news quickly spread to the entire spirit stream battlefield through various channels, and even to the 9 states. The entire world was shocked. A trivial 5th-order spirit stream realm cultivator was nothing in the eyes of the great masters, but what this 5th-order spirit stream realm cultivator had done made them take him seriously. The good news was that although Lu Yi won in the end, he was seriously injured and on the verge of death. No one knew if he could escape this calamity. In the Tsangming Mountain, Elder Tang, who had been waiting in the main sect of the Tsangming Mountain, was stunned when he heard this news. Thinking back to the disheveled kid who had just opened the first aperture half a year ago, and comparing all the feats he had done, he almost suspected that they were the same person. A 5th-order spirit stream realm cultivator in half a year was already exaggerated enough, but there were always some fortuitous encounters that could explain it. In the spirit stream battlefield, there were many fortuitous encounters. But killing so many 6th-order spirit stream realm cultivators as a 5th-order spirit stream realm cultivator was somewhat inconceivable. When Elder Tang took in that little brat, he did not see such great potential in him. But it had to be said that the battle on Golden Light Summit had pushed the Jade Blood sect of the War Province, which had been silent for several decades, to the forefront of the storm once again. The myriad Demon Ridge side thought that this banner would fall immediately, but now, it seemed like it was about to rise from the ashes. How could this be? So, less than 2 hours after the news of the battle on Golden Light Summit spread, many myriad Demon Ridge sects passed down an order to their disciples. If Liu Ye did not survive, then Jade Blood sect was destined to be wiped out. But if he survived this calamity, then if they met in the Spirit Stream battlefield in the future, under the premise that the battlefield rules allowed, they were to eliminate him by any means necessary. Such a character had to be eliminated as soon as possible. Otherwise, it would be difficult to deal with him once he grew. The myriad Demon Ridge side had suffered a similar loss several decades ago, so they would not repeat the same mistake. Force Prefecture, Pillheart Sect Headquarters. As a second-grade sect, the Pillheart sect's heritage was no doubt extremely powerful. Decades ago, it even had hopes of reaching the first grade. However, due to a huge battle, the sect suffered heavy losses, causing its grade to plummet. It was only a few years ago that it barely recovered. At that moment, many members of the upper echelons were gathered in the Pillheart sect's meeting hall. Most of them had their eyes closed and were silent. Only a middle-aged man was recounting the events of the battle at Golden Light Dome. He was Yu Guanjia, a deputy sect master of the Pillheart sect. He held great authority and was a divine sea realm cultivator. His tone was calm and he spoke objectively. In a few simple sentences, he recounted the entire sequence of events. Everyone present had their own channels of communication, so even though they couldn't enter the Spirit Stream battlefield as they pleased, they had all heard about the huge commotion that had occurred on the Golden Light Summit. After Yu Guanjia finished speaking, he continued, "In the battle at Golden Light Dome, our sect has 2 disciples that participated. One of them is Li Baxin and the other is Feng Yuechun. These 2 disciples are the guardian and deputy guardian of our sect's encampment at the Spirit Stream battlefield. They left their encampment without any orders, disregarding our sect's foundation and violating the sect's rules. Sect Master is currently in seclusion, so please come up with a plan to deal with this matter." An elder said with a frown, "The guardian and deputy guardian leaving their encampment together is too vile. If other enemy sects were to take the opportunity to invade, wouldn't our Pillheart sect's centuries of hard work be for naught? If the other disciples are the same as them, what future does our Pillheart sect have? They need to be severely punished." Immediately, several people echoed him. Someone else said, "This matter concerns the Jade Blood sect, yet that Li Baxin is so impatient. It seems that he is still immature." As for Feng Yuechun, as he spoke, he raised his head and glanced at a dignified woman opposite him. "I watched Yuechun grow up. The little girl is obedient and sensible and won't make any mistakes. She was probably bewitched by that Li Baxin. That's right, Yuechun is the most obedient. Moreover, no one has dared to invade our sect's encampment for more than a decade. Yuechun has also contributed greatly, so it's inevitable for children to make small mistakes occasionally. However, she has still violated the sect's rules. How about this? Order her to immediately enter seclusion and advance to the Cloud River tier as soon as possible. She has been in the Spirit Stream tier for far too long." "Very well. As for Li Baxin, tell him to return to the sect immediately and report his duties without delay. As for his subsequent punishment, we will decide based on his attitude." The few of them spoke one after another, clearly arranging for the 2 disciples who had violated the sect's rules. However, the difference in treatment between the 2 was like the difference between heaven and earth. Feng Yuechun was protected, while Li Baxin was treated like the child of a stepmother, unloved by his grandmother and unloved by his uncle. Yu Guanjia turned to look at the dignified woman. "What do you think, junior sister Chiu?" The woman stood up, crossed her arms in front of her chest, and strode out of the main hall, not saying a single word from beginning to end. Yu Guanjia hurriedly said to everyone, "You can discuss the remaining matters among yourselves." He strode out in pursuit. A moment later, he flew side by side with junior sister Chio in midair, and said with a worried expression, "Junior sister, don't be angry. The sect master has gone into seclusion, and as the sect's sealing envoy, I am responsible for the matters of the spirit stream battlefield. Li Baxian and Yuechan have violated the sect's rules, and I cannot turn a blind eye to it. Of these two children, one is your biological child, and although you have watched the other grow up, their seniority is still the same as yours and mine. You and I have both seen Yuechan's feelings for Li Baxian. There is a difference in seniority between the two, so how can they live peacefully? Why don't we take this opportunity to separate them? You are Yuechan's mother, so why don't you persuade Yuechan to advance to the Cloud River tier as soon as possible? If she continues to stay in the Spirit Stream tier, it will not be good for her future. Our Pill Heart sect will also lose a pillar of support in the future." Junior sister Chio stopped, turned to look at Yu Guanjia, and said indifferently, "Seniority? I remember that senior brother took in a new concubine half a year ago. Based on seniority, it wouldn't be too much for that little girl to call you grandfather, right?" Yu Guanjia's face turned red. How can this be compared? The woman's expression turned cold. The sect master is not here, so you have the final say in the matters of the sect. I don't care what you do, but if I find out that anyone dares to secretly harm Li Baxian, don't blame me for disregarding the friendship between fellow disciples. After saying this, she left with a flick of her sleeves. Yu Guanjia calmly looked at her back as she left. His hands clenched under his sleeves, and his expression gradually turned cold. An hour later, the Pill Heart sect sent out an order, ordering the garrison's vice envoy Li Baxian to return to the sect immediately without delay. However, news quickly spread that Li Baxian was currently locked in a fierce battle with Yan Xing, who was ranked second on the Spirit Stream tier. He was completely unable to free himself. On the other side, a group of Cloud River tier cultivators from the Vitality sect had nothing to do, so they gathered to gamble. The chubby Pang Daohai was the banker, and a group of fellow disciples who were passionate about gambling placed their bets everywhere. The table was filled with shiny spirit stones. Most of them were piled up in front of Pang Daohai. Looking at his happy expression, it was obvious that he had won a lot. He suddenly turned his head to look at a cultivator with a mustache. "Senior brother Lishan, something big happened at the Spirit Stream battlefield a few days ago. Have you heard about it?" Lishan was only focused on the cards in his hand and did not care about anything else. He casually replied, "What big thing could happen at the Spirit Stream battlefield?" Pang Daohai then told them about the battle at the Golden Light Summit. The group of Cloud River tier cultivators who had been gambling here for a few days were all stunned and exclaimed in surprise. Pang Daohai chuckled. "It's interesting. Senior brother Lishan should know that fifth-order brat." Lushan raised his eyebrows. "I know him?" "Half a year ago, in Evil Moon Valley. The one who was taken in by Elder Tang of the Jade Blood sect." Lushan thought for a moment and was very surprised. "That Luya? That's him. That's impossible, right?" Lushan frowned. "Did you get the wrong person?" He still had some impression of the little guy called Luya. After all, he was taken under Elder Tang's tutelage. Moreover, he had the talent of Ya. Luya's nickname was spread by him. But how was that possible? A one-leaf cultivator, a fifth-order cultivator in half a year, and killed the challengers of the 43 sects of the Myriad Demon Ridge at the Golden Light Summit. He has been taken back to the Jade Blood sect. I don't know if he's dead or not, but as long as he's still breathing, with senior sister Shui Yuan's means, she can definitely save him. Pang Daohai looked at Lishan meaningfully. "And that brat seems to care a lot about the name Luya. I heard that a guy from the Myriad Demon Ridge called him fellow cultivator Luya, but he was killed by him. With the potential this brat has shown now, when he reaches the Cloud River tier. Hee, senior brother Lishan, take care." Lushan's face turned ugly, but he sneered, "What a joke, I'm afraid of him? He has to survive first. Show your cards, show your cards." Pang Daohai did not say anything else. Just as he was about to show his cards, a strong wave of spirit energy came from outside. Before he could show his cards, the roof was lifted. A group of Cloud River tier cultivators looked up, dumbfounded. They saw more than a dozen figures in midair surrounding the place. The leader was a true lake-tier martial uncle, who was looking at them with fire in his eyes. The discipline hall. Someone shouted, and the crowd scattered. The true lake-tier cultivator gritted his teeth, openly gathering for gambling. The reputation of our vitality sect has been ruined by you guys. Take them all down. A huge net fell from the sky, sealing the area. None of the gamblers who had gathered here managed to escape, and they were all firmly caught in the net. An hour later, screams came from the discipline hall one after another. They were extremely shrill. The cultivators of the vitality sect who were passing by heard them, and they all trembled in fear. Some of the new disciples who had just joined the sect turned pale. The senior brothers who had been around for a long time reminded them, in the future, if you meet those fat fellows in the sect, you must stay away. They are the cancer of our vitality sect. Don't let them lead you astray. The new disciples nodded their heads vigorously. Please wait patiently. The maintenance staff will correct the content of the chapter in 2 minutes. Chapter 170. Within the boundless darkness, a ripple began to appear. As the ripple spread, Lu Ye's consciousness began to awaken. After an unknown amount of time, the darkness was torn apart and an indescribable pain and itchiness assaulted him. Lu Ye abruptly opened his eyes. He could vaguely make out 2 figures standing by his bed. One of them immediately sat down and raised his hand. Gentle spiritual energy flowed through his palm and into his body as he examined his condition. His vision was a bit blurry and he couldn't make out this person's appearance, but he was certain that it was a woman. There was another figure standing by his bed. Lu Yi glanced at it for a moment and felt that it was the sect master. He opened his mouth to call out, but as the gentle spiritual energy flowed into his body, his consciousness began to grow hazy again. He vaguely heard the sect master ask, "What's the situation?" An ethereal voice immediately sounded, "You're dead meat." The sect master's voice rang out, "You little girl, don't scare this old man." This old man finally, he couldn't hear anything else after that. The entire world quickly moved away from him and he fell into a deep slumber once again. After an unknown amount of time, Lu Yi woke up once again. Someone was sitting next to him, using spiritual energy to treat his injuries. Compared to the last time he had woken up, Lu Yi felt much better. At the very least, his consciousness wasn't as hazy. His vision slowly cleared up and he saw that the person sitting next to him was a young woman. She had a pleasant appearance and a pair of clear eyes without any impurities. What surprised Lu Yi was that this woman's appearance was somewhat similar to his eldest senior sister, Wei Yang. If he really had to compare them, this woman was like an immature eldest senior sister. However, compared to her eldest senior sister's maturity, this woman was undoubtedly purer. "You're awake? You are?" Lu Yi opened his mouth, his voice hoarse and his throat burning. The woman smiled gently. "I'm your second senior sister, Shui Yuan." So he didn't have a second senior brother, only a second senior sister. Lu Yi thought to himself. Where is this? Lu Yi wanted to turn his head to look at his surroundings but was shocked to find that he couldn't move his neck. "This is the Blue Blood Sect," the second senior sister replied. "Little junior brother, you've already returned home." Returned home? Had he already achieved the goal he had set since entering the Spirit Stream battlefield? Lu Ye's heart relaxed, but he immediately thought of Yi and Hupa. Where are my mounts? He was certain that Yi and Hupa were not by his side, or else they would have been guarding him. It's temporarily staying in Mount Songmin's encampment. You haven't established a contract with it, so it can't return to the 9 provinces with you. However, I've already arranged for it to be sent to my sect's encampment. When your injuries have recovered, you can go and find it. Lu Yi didn't know what kind of contract he was going to make with Hu Pe, but he knew that there were certain conditions that had to be met in order to travel between the Spirit Stream battlefield and the Kingdom of the 9 States. He wasn't in a rush for the time being. Hu Pe had Yi with him, and there shouldn't be any danger at the Jade Blood Sect's encampment. Only now did Lu Yi have the time to check his own condition. His spiritual power had long since dried up. He had encountered this situation once before, so he did not panic. As long as his body recovered, his spiritual power would naturally recover. His injuries should be very serious because he realized that he had been wrapped up like a dumpling. Other than his eyes, nose, and mouth, there was not a single gap left. Following his second senior sister Shui Yuan's actions, he was currently wrapped in a kind of spiritual power that was as gentle as water. His entire body was filled with a mixture of pain and itchiness. It was similar to the situation when Hua Xi had treated him, but Hua Xi had used a wood-type spiritual power, while his second senior sister had used a water-type spiritual power. These two types of spiritual power contained a huge amount of vitality and were extremely beneficial for healing injuries. Lu Yi understood that his second senior sister was a medical cultivator, just like Hua Xi. He didn't see his eldest senior sister and fourth senior brother, nor did he see his third senior brother, who he had never seen before. Even the sect master was nowhere to be seen. 2 hours later, his second senior sister withdrew her spiritual power and warned Lu Yi, "Don't move around. If there's anything, call me. I'll be outside." "Yes," Lu Yi responded softly. Shui Yuan got up and walked out. After closing the door, she thought for a moment and raised her hand to tap on the battlefield imprint to send out a message. "I've saved him." At the same time, in the cloud region that bordered the military region, which was considered the territory of the Myriad Devil Ridge, Tang Yifeng's figure floated in midair. The violent spiritual power fluctuations slowly subsided. Below him, a sect of the Myriad Devil Ridge had been razed to the ground. This Myriad Devil Ridge force called White Wolf City was almost wiped out. In the ruins, countless cultivators of the Myriad Devil Ridge lay dead. White Wolf City was only a 6th-grade force. The strongest cultivator in the sect was only at the True Lake Realm, and there weren't many of them. In the face of a Divine Sea Realm cultivator like the sect master, they naturally didn't have the power to fight back. The sect wasn't wiped out because the Spirit Stream Realm and Cloud River Realm cultivators hid in the battlefield when they saw that the situation wasn't good. However, after this battle, White Wolf City's rank would most likely drop in the sect's assessment. Suddenly, a stream of light swept over from afar. Before it got close, it shouted, "Tang Yifeng, you're courting death." The sect master didn't say a word. He turned into a stream of light and rushed towards the person. In an instant, the two figures were locked in a fierce battle. The more the person fought, the more frightened he became. The strength displayed by Tang Yifeng was far beyond the understanding of the Myriad Devil Ridge. After just a short fight, he knew that he was no match for Tang Yifeng and hurriedly fled. The sect master looked in the direction that the person fled and chose not to pursue. Although he could kill the person, it would definitely take a lot of time. The cloud region was under the control of the Myriad Devil Ridge. Besides that person, there must be other Divine Sea Realm cultivators on the way. He immediately flew in a direction. On the same day, the 3 sects of the Myriad Devil Ridge in the cloud region were attacked by the sect master of the Jade Blood sect, Tang Yifeng. All of them suffered heavy losses, especially the White Wolf City. The entire sect's True Lake Realm cultivators were slaughtered, and more than half of the Cloud River Realm cultivators were killed or injured. The disaster caused by an enraged spell cultivator was extremely terrifying, especially when the spell cultivator was at the Divine Sea Realm. The Myriad Devil Ridge dispatched more than a dozen Divine Sea Realm cultivators to surround and intercept Tang Yifeng. The two sides fought for half a day, and Tang Yifeng escaped with heavy injuries. But before he left, he said something. If anyone dared to disregard the rules and attack the disciples of the Jade Blood sect, then don't blame him for not caring about his reputation and bullying the weak. It was only a few days after the battle at the Golden Light Summit, and such a thing happened. Obviously, Tang Yifeng was standing up for his disciples. The 3 sects of the cloud region that were attacked by him all had disciples who participated in the battle at the Golden Light Summit. The ferocious beast that had been silent for many years finally showed its fangs. For a moment, many sects of the Myriad Devil Ridge were worried. In the room, Lu Yi sat cross-legged. He had to admit that his second senior sister's medical skills were really amazing. He had suffered such heavy injuries before, but after being treated by second senior sister for 2 days, he felt much better. Although he was still wrapped up like a dumpling, it was obvious that he was getting better quickly. Second senior sister would also feed him some strange medicine, but compared to the disgusting bitter medicine concocted by that black-hearted woman, Hua Si, the medicine concocted by second senior sister tasted much better. At the moment, he was recovering his spiritual energy. After swallowing a panacea and refining the medicinal effect, he activated his cultivation method. Then, he added spirit-gathering spiritual tattoos to his spiritual cavities. Then, he found something that gave him a headache. His spiritual energy was very heterogeneous. Even if he recovered his spiritual energy, it was still heterogeneous, and the situation was more serious than before. There was no way around it. During the battle at the Golden Light Summit, he had swallowed too many panacea to recover. Even if the quality of those panacea was good, it was inevitable that a large amount of elixir toxins had accumulated in his body. If he wanted to solve this problem, he had to let the talent tree recover its ability to burn elixir toxins. Lu Yi had some ideas on how to do that, but he was not in a hurry. Healing was more important. Moreover, he had to go to the place to take Hooper out. He should be very worried about him. Bang. The door was kicked open and Lu Yi jumped in fright. He looked up and saw a large bed walk in. Behind the bed was the petite figure of his second senior sister. After getting along with her for a few days, Lu Yi understood that his second senior sister was a genuinely gentle woman. She was not like Hua Si, who looked gentle on the surface but was actually two-faced. In the past few days, her care for him could be said to be meticulous, almost treating him like a child. Lu Yi didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Therefore, he didn't know what second senior sister had encountered. She looked a little angry and even moved a bed over. Second senior sister, this is... She couldn't be here to take care of him, right? Second senior sister smiled sweetly at Lu Yi and said in a gentle voice, "It's none of your business. Have a good rest." Second senior sister threw the bed to the side and took out a bedding from somewhere. After arranging it properly, she turned to look at the door and said in a cold voice, "Why are you still hiding and not coming in? Is there something to be embarrassed about?" Only then did Lu Yi realize that there was someone outside the door. Looking up, he couldn't see anyone, and looked at Shui Yuan in confusion. Shui Yuan snorted, "If you don't come in, I'll go invite him in." A light cough came from outside the door. "You wicked disciple, is this how you speak to your master in front of your junior brother?" Following this voice, the figure of an elderly man walked in from outside, his expression dignified as he stroked his beard. Who else could it be but the sect master? Lu Ye's eyes lit up and he hurriedly tried to get up, but as soon as he got up, he almost fell down. The sect master stepped forward and supported him. Their eyes met and Lu Yi could clearly see the guilt in the sect master's eyes. The old man's mouth squirmed twice, his thousands of words condensing into a single sentence, "I've made you suffer." He really didn't expect that after accepting Lu Yi as his disciple, so many things would happen. In the end, this was the legacy of Blue Blood sect. It didn't make sense for a disciple who had never even entered the sect to bear the burden, much less almost lose his life. In the past 6 months, although he was certain that Lu Yi was still alive, he didn't have enough manpower to search for Lu Ye's traces on a large scale. He had asked Shui Yuan to come forward and ask some trustworthy rogue cultivators, but their strength wasn't high. Wanting to find someone in the vast spirit stream battlefield was like looking for a needle in a haystack. Momo reminds you, after reading, please save it. It will be more convenient to read it again. After you submit it, the maintenance staff will correct the content of the chapter within 2 minutes. Please wait patiently. Chapter 171. The sect master did not know what Lu Yi had encountered in the spirit stream battlefield over the past 6 months, but when Shui Yuan had helped him bandage his wounds, he had seen it with his own eyes. The body of a 16 or 17-year-old boy was covered in old and new wounds, several of which were extremely fatal. It was easy to imagine what kind of hardships he had encountered in the spirit stream battlefield. Allowing an innocent and ignorant boy to suffer such hardships was his dereliction of duty and Blue Blood sect's responsibility, so after bringing Lu Yi back to the sect, he had immediately charged into Cloud Province. He wanted to ensure that there would be no more unfair incidents like the Battle of Golden Light Peak in the future. He wanted to let those old farts of Myriad Demon Ridge know that Blue Blood Sect still had him as a shield and that before he fell, his disciples could not be humiliated. For this reason, he did not hesitate to expose the cultivation he had hidden for decades. Inside the room, the sect master patted Lu Ye's shoulder and smiled. "It's rare for you to find your way back. First heal your wounds." Lu Yi respectfully responded, "Yes." His heart was filled with curiosity. Why did the sect master look like he had been beaten up by someone with a bloody nose and a swollen face? He suddenly understood why his second senior sister had moved another bed here. "Senior, do you want to come here on your own or do you want me to help you?" Shui Yuan suddenly asked. The sect master straightened up and smiled lightly. "It's just a minor injury, there's no need to waste so much effort." "Wah, sect master." Lu Yi was shocked as he watched the sect master spit out a large mouthful of blood and his face turned pale. The sect master smiled at him. "Don't worry, it's just some blood clots, once I spit it out." Well, Shui Yuan hurriedly rushed over and helped the sect master lie down on the bed. After some work, she finally stabilized the sect master's injuries and complained with red eyes, "You're already so old yet you're still so stubborn. Sooner or later you'll die outside and there won't even be anyone to collect your corpse." The sect master was scolded to the point of losing his temper and could only lament in his heart that his disciples were unfilial. Lu Yi watched from the side, trembling with fear, suddenly discovering that his second senior sister did not seem to be so gentle. Second senior sister had just finished her work and did not have time to wipe the sweat from her forehead when a voice called out from outside, "Old man, second senior sister, I'm back." Lu Yi heard the voice and replied, "Fourth senior brother?" Moments later, a figure as straight as a sword appeared at the door. It was Li Baxian. Their eyes met. Li Baxian grinned at Lu Yi, but then he fell to the ground, kicking up a cloud of dust. "Fourth senior brother!" Lu Yi exclaimed. Li Baxian crawled on the ground, raised his hand, and gave Lu Yi a thumbs up. "Don't worry, I'm still okay." Shui Yuan, who had just settled the headmaster down, appeared in front of Li Baxian in a flash. She reached out to grab his collar and lifted him up. As she swept a glance over him, the expression in her eyes changed slightly. "Such heavy injuries." Li Baxian smiled brightly at Shui Yuan. "That bastard Yan Xing is even worse. I didn't embarrass the Blue Blood Sect." After saying that, his head tilted to the side and he fainted. Shui Yuan began to get busy again. 2 hours later, Shui Yuan wiped the sweat off her forehead and looked at the 3 beds in front of her. She was deeply exhausted. A moment later, she suddenly smiled again. The Blue Blood Sect had not been so lively for many years. Lu Yi spent the day in this strange atmosphere. There were 3 beds in the room. He was in the middle, the headmaster was on the right, and Li Baxian was on the left. Of the 4 people in the sect, 3 were lying down, leaving only Shui Yuan busy. 2 days later, there were 3 large barrels in the room. The barrels were steaming hot and filled with a dark green medicinal liquid. The headmaster, Li Baxian, and Lu Yi each soaked in a barrel, meditating to absorb the medicinal effects. This medicine was concocted by second senior sister and had a great effect on healing injuries. Yesterday, the bandages wrapped around Lu Ye's body were removed. As a result, he found that his hair was much shorter. Thinking back to the last battle, it should have been burned by the female cultivator of the Sacred Flame sect. Fortunately, he had not been burned bald, otherwise he would not have been able to see anyone. After being nursed by second senior sister, his external injuries were basically healed. After being in the same room for a few days and chatting with fourth senior brother and the headmaster, Lu Yi more or less understood the basic situation of the Blue Blood sect. In the entire Blue Blood sect, before he came, there were only the headmaster and second senior sister. Now that he was here, there were only 3 people in the entire sect. This could not be described as just a decline in talent and the decline of the sect. No wonder people said that the Blue Blood sect was on the verge of being abandoned. As for fourth senior brother Li Baxian, although he could be considered a disciple of the Blue Blood sect when he was young, he later transferred to Pill Heart sect. Third senior brother's situation was the same. In another sect, he was not a disciple of the Blue Blood sect in name, just a member of the Blue Blood sect. As for eldest senior sister Wei Yang, Louis had not seen her since he woke up. When he asked fourth senior brother said mysteriously, "Eldest senior sister, she is the kind of person who comes and goes like a dragon. It will be very difficult for you to see her in the future, so don't worry too much." He did not specifically explain eldest senior sister's situation to Lu Yi, making him confused. He wanted to personally thank eldest senior sister. After all, at the critical moment on top of the golden light, eldest senior sister was the first to arrive and protect him. As for why he was targeted as a disciple of the Blue Blood sect, fourth senior brother also explained. Only then did Lu Yi know that a few decades ago, an extraordinary person had appeared in the Blue Blood sect. This person was their current generation's eldest senior brother, Feng Wujiang. Under the leadership of this eldest senior brother, the Blue Blood sect rose rapidly. The Blue Blood sect also became a symbol of the Grand Heaven Alliance, a banner. At that time, the Blue Blood sect raised its arm and called for help, and the Grand Heaven Alliance had many followers. It was unknown how many sects in the Myriad Devil Ridge had been suppressed by the Blue Blood sect. Several first-grade sects were even killed and dropped several grades. The Sacred Flame sect was one of them. Therefore, this time, in order to kill Lu Yi, the Sacred Flame sect was even willing to cripple their own spiritual cavities. The boundless glory and praise seemed to have caused that eldest senior brother to gradually lose himself. He slowly became obstinate and self-opinionated. 30 years ago, in a war between the two factions, he did not listen to advice and led a large group of experts to attack a first-grade sect in the Myriad Devil Ridge. In the end, he was ambushed. In that battle, Feng Wujiang died and the Grand Heaven Alliance suffered heavy losses. In that battle, the disciples of the Blue Blood sect were almost completely annihilated. It was also because of that battle that the Blue Blood sect gradually began to decline. Today, this symbol and banner that the Grand Heaven Alliance was once proud of was about to be removed. Those enemies who had been suppressed by the Blue Blood sect naturally did not want to see the Blue Blood sect continue to exist. Therefore, after Lu Ye's identity was exposed, it caused such a huge commotion. Therefore, this is the trouble caused by that eldest senior brother. Little junior brother, you just suffered a grudge that you shouldn't have. In the wooden barrel, Li Baxian was bare-chested. He raised his head and leaned against the side of the barrel. He held a wine gourd in his mouth and took a big gulp. That old man was useless. After eldest senior brother died, he couldn't hold the fort anymore. How old were you at that time? What did you know? The sect master's voice came from the other side. Blue Blood sect wasn't a strong sect to begin with. It was your eldest senior brother who single-handedly raised the sect. It can be said that he was the reason Blue Blood sect was able to become a first-grade sect. Now that he has fallen, the sect naturally has no foundation. Your eldest senior brother was indeed amazing, but the heavens were jealous of his talent and died too early, leaving behind a mess. Amazing? Li Baxian laughed. How does he compare to little junior brother? The sect master fell silent. This matter was incomparable. Although Feng Wujiang was amazing, he had never done anything so shocking when he was just a fifth-order cultivator. That disciple of his was a late bloomer. Before reaching the Cloud River realm, he was unknown, but after reaching the Cloud River realm, he suddenly displayed extraordinary talent. After that, he became unstoppable. At his peak, he even obtained the honor of being the Union Master of Grand Heaven Alliance. A moment later, the sect master suddenly said, From now on, when you walk around the Spirit Stream battlefield, you must be careful. Although the Battle of Golden Light Peak made you famous, it will also make Myriad Demon Ridge even more wary. They won't be willing to see a second Feng Wujiang rise. If there is a chance, they will definitely try to get rid of you. Half a year ago, the headmaster had planned to send Lu Ye to another sect to cultivate, but now it was definitely impossible. After the Battle of Golden Light Summit, Lu Ye had been labeled as a member of the Blue Blood sect. Everyone now knew that the Blue Blood sect had a Lu Ye. Lu Yi opened his mouth, wanting to tell the sect master that his name was not Yi, But in the end, he didn't bother arguing and simply nodded, yes. In his heart, Lu Yi swore, "Vitality Sex Lishan, you and I are irreconcilable." Li Baxian comforted, "But little junior brother, you don't have to worry too much. 2 days ago, the old man, and with the old man here, something like this won't happen again. Even if Myriad Demon Ridge wants to target you, it will only be within the rules." Within the rules? In short, in the Spirit Stream battlefield, the matters of the Outer Circle will be handled by the people of the Outer Circle, and the matters of the Inner Circle will be handled by the people of the Inner Circle. No master from the Core Circle will run out to kill you, otherwise if everyone does, not only will the Spirit Stream battlefield fall into chaos, the 9 province will also fall into chaos. Although Grand Heaven Alliance and Myriad Demon Ridge are like fire and water, in general, they still have to act according to the rules. This time, it was mainly because Myriad Demon Ridge was driven into a corner that you suffered such grievances. Lu Yi nodded, indicating that he understood. This was good news for him. With his current 5th order cultivation, he could still hang around in the Outer Circle for a while, but once his cultivation reached the 6th or 7th order, he would be able to enter the Inner Circle. Ping. The door was kicked open, and the dense fog surged. Second senior sister Shui Yuan's cold voice rang out, "Who's drinking?" Li Baxian froze and turned to look at Shui Yuan. "No, I didn't. You're so seriously injured yet you're still drinking? Didn't I tell you not to drink during this time? If you like to drink, then drink as much as you want." Second senior sister arrived in front of Li Baxian in a few steps, rolled up her sleeves, and pressed her small hand towards his head, directly pushing him into the water. Goyil. Lu Yi and the sect master looked at each other across a wooden barrel before slowly sliding their bodies into the water, leaving only their eyes exposed. They were trembling. Chapter 172. On the 7th day after returning to the sect, Lu Ye's injuries had mostly healed, showing just how good his second senior sister's medical skills were. Even the condition of his spirit chi had improved. The medicinal juices he soaked in and drank every day seemed to have the effect of purifying pill toxins. His second senior sister had obviously noticed the problem with his spirit chi and had specifically adjusted it. What Lu Yi praised the most was that his second senior sister could also cook delicious medicinal cuisines. Not only were they delicious, they even had some body-tempering effects. After recuperating for a few days, Lu Yi clearly felt that his vitality had increased by a notch. Now, Lu Yi was the only new disciple in the Blue Blood sect and he had suffered a great grievance because of the previous generation's grievances, so his second senior sister had given almost all her care and love to Lu Yi. Li Baxian, who had come to the Blue Blood sect to eat and heal, did not have this blessing. Every time he ate, he felt like he was being targeted. Although the Blue Blood sect was now in dire straits, it was still a first-grade sect a few decades ago. A starving camel was still bigger than a horse, so there were always some good things left in the sect. These things might not be of much use to cultivators, but to people like Lu Yi, whose cultivation was not high, they were of great help. Late in the morning in the main guard peak, Soul Calming Hall. The Blue Blood sect covered a vast area and had over 100 spirit peaks, of which the main guard peak was only one. At its peak, each spirit peak had a large number of disciples. But now, those spiritual peaks were all abandoned, and only the most central defensive peak was left. The sect master and second senior sister usually lived on the main guard peak. The Soul Calming Hall was also located on the main guard peak. Originally, there was a soul calming peak that housed the spirit tablets of the cultivators who had died since the sect was founded. At this moment in the Soul Calming Hall, in front of the tens of thousands of spirit tablets, Lu Yi was kneeling while his second senior sister Shui Yuan and fourth senior brother Li Baxian stood to the side, their expressions solemn. The sect master lit 3 incense sticks in the censer at the front and respectfully bowed before saying, "Blue Blood Sect's 10th sect master, Tang Yifeng, respectfully greets the ancestors. Today, there is a person from the War Province, Lu Yi, with a simple and honest temperament, with a gentle temperament, and good talent." He praised Lu Yi so much that Lu Ye's expression became a little unnatural. Today, I accept Lu Yi as my disciple. I hope that the ancestors will protect him and keep him safe. Turning around to face Lu Yi, the sect master's expression was solemn as he said, Lu Yi, from today onwards, you are an official disciple of Blue Blood Sect, sharing the sect's glory and disgrace. In the future, when you act outside, you are not allowed to do anything that brings shame to the sect. I hope you can. Speaking up to here, the sect master's voice paused for a moment before he gently stroked Lu Ye's head. Grow up safely. Originally, there would have been some grand rhetoric, but the Blue Blood Sect only had 3 people in total, so there was no point in boasting. Moreover, after the battle at Golden Light Peak, Lu Ye's situation would not be too good in the future, so the sect master only had one wish. If Lu Yi could be safe, yes? Lu Yi bowed respectfully. Although half a year ago, on the way back to the sect master had respectfully asked Tianji to bear witness and accept Lu Yi as an official disciple of Blue Blood Sect, that was only a temporary measure. Now that this process had been completed, Lu Yi could be considered a true disciple of Blue Blood Sect. Sweeping his eyes over the tens of thousands of memorial tablets, Lu Yi felt as if he could see all the sect's ancestors staring at him. Lu Yi slowly got up, and since coming to this world, his soul, which had been completely helpless, finally felt a sense of belonging. From now on, I am also a member of a sect. Congratulations, little junior brother, Li Baxian smiled from the side. 4th senior brother. Lu Yi respectfully bowed. This bow was not only out of gratitude for Li Baxian's desperate efforts to protect him, but also out of respect for his fellow senior brother. 2nd senior sister. Lu Yi bowed to Shui Yuan again. Shui Yuan's eyes were slightly red. Unlike Li Baxian, when Blue Blood Sect had declined, Li Baxian had still been a child and didn't understand anything, but Shui Yuan had witnessed with her own eyes how the behemoth that was Blue Blood Sect had fallen. This scene made her recall the scene from several decades ago, when the youthful youths had first joined the sect. Back then, Blue Blood Sect was truly glorious. She slowly walked in front of Lu Yi and grabbed his right hand. Then she took out a large seal that effused streams of light. Taking a deep breath, she said in a delicate voice, Blue Blood Sect's 11th generation disciple, Palm Seal Envoy, Shui Yuan, respectfully requests the heavens to bear witness that the 11th generation disciple, Lu Yi, is conferred the position of Guardian Envoy of Blue Blood Sect's Spirit Stream battlefield. With that said, she picked up the large seal and placed it on the back of Lu Ye's hand. Unknowingly, the heavens' secrets descended. Lu Ye's body trembled slightly before he quickly stabilized himself. He looked suspiciously at Shui Yuan. This is, Li Baxian explained from the side, every sect's encampment has its own guardian envoy and deputy envoy. For example, I'm the Pillheart sect's deputy guardian envoy. The guardian envoy and deputy guardian envoy have the responsibility of guarding their own encampment. Correspondingly, they also have a lot of authority. I won't be able to explain it all in a short time. Later, I'll record a jade slip for you. You'll understand after you read it carefully. He grinned. Right now, the Blue Blood Sect's 11th generation disciples are only you and 2nd senior sister. 2nd senior sister is a true Lake Realm cultivator and cannot enter the Spirit Stream battlefield casually. So, junior brother, I'll have to trouble you with the encampment at the Spirit Stream battlefield. Shui Yuan said from the side, you don't have to worry about the encampment. I'm just giving you this identity to make it easier for you to enter and exit the battlefield. After all, it's better to cultivate at the Spirit Stream battlefield. Li was curious. Our Blue Blood Sect's encampment at the Spirit Stream battlefield hasn't been attacked by the myriad Devil Ridge? Once his identity as a Blue Blood Sect disciple was exposed, he would be besieged by many myriad Devil Ridge cultivators. There was no reason for the encampment to still exist. Li Baxian shook his head. In the past, there were people who attacked it, but not anymore. That's because there are no benefits to attacking the Blue Blood Sect's encampment. If there are no benefits, who would do it? What's more, although there aren't any Blue Blood Sect disciples there to oversee the situation, there's still a vicious beast. The Outer Circle's forces generally can't take it down. Shui Yuan also said, the situation at our Blue Blood Sect's encampment is more complicated. Right now, there are many loose cultivators gathered there. When Junior Brother was lost at the Spirit Stream battlefield, I asked a few people to investigate your whereabouts, but they didn't find anything. As for those loose cultivators, apart from a few trustworthy ones, I'll let them stay. As for the rest, Junior Brother, you can do as you see fit. You can expel them if you want. Lu Yi nodded. Right now, he knew nothing about the situation at the encampment and his identity as a guardian, so he wasn't in a hurry to make a decision. It wouldn't be too late to decide after he familiarized himself with everything. Moreover, fourth senior brother was the vice guardian, so if there was anything he didn't understand, he could ask him for advice. Oh right, there's also that pet beast of yours. The people of Mount Cyan have already sent it to the encampment. If you want to go look for it, you can go now. I'll go now, Lu Yi hurriedly said. Come with me, Shui Yuan said as she led the way. Soon, she brought Lu Yi to Divine Secret Hall. Every sect had its own Divine Secret Hall. The main sect had one, and the Spirit Stream battlefield had another, where the Divine Secret Pillar was placed. It could be said that this was one of the core areas of every sect, and it was directly related to whether the disciples of the sect could safely enter and leave the Spirit Stream battlefield. If this Divine Secret Hall was captured, the consequences would be unimaginable. Under Shui Yuan's guidance, Lu Yi raised his hand and pressed it against the Divine Secret Pillar. Just like the first time he entered the Spirit Stream battlefield, when the battlefield mark on the back of his hand resonated with the Divine Secret Pillar, the entire world around him rapidly faded away, and everything around him became blurry. Remember to ask for a pet contract from the Divine Secret Pillar, Shui Yuan reminded him. In the blink of an eye, the blurry and distorted surroundings became solid again. When he came back to his senses, he was already standing in an unfamiliar and desolate hall. This hall was extremely spacious, but there was no one inside. Looking at the Heaven's Secret Pillar in front of him, Lu Yi felt that there was a close connection between it and his battlefield mark. This connection was not only because he was a disciple of Blue Blood sect but also because he was the guardian of this place. Moreover, he also felt that there were some wonderful things hidden inside this Divine Secret Pillar that he could perceive and even adjust to a certain extent through his identity as the guardian. He didn't know exactly how to adjust it and would need to explore it. He didn't act rashly as he knew too little about this right now, so it was better to wait until he learned from his fourth senior brother. The most important thing right now was to bring Hooper over. He should be very worried about him. Lu Yi walked out of the Grand Hall and was bathed in the bright sunlight. Looking up, he realized something interesting. The time in the Spirit Stream battlefield was the same as in the outside world, and it was the same time in the outside world. After withdrawing his gaze, Lu Yi suddenly noticed that there were gazes looking at him from all around. Lu Yi immediately reached out and pressed his hand against his waist, but found nothing. Only then did he remember that his long saber had been completely shattered. Looking around, Yang Kai saw several cultivators around him, some looking at him in surprise, some looking at him in surprise. These people's cultivations weren't high, only third or fourth order. It seemed that they were the rogue cultivators that his second senior sister had mentioned. The Blue Blood sect's station on the Spirit Stream battlefield hadn't been occupied by any disciples for several decades, so although it still existed, it had become a gathering place for many rogue cultivators, forming a large market. However, these rogue cultivators had some self-awareness and didn't gather in the Divine Secret Hall, but outside of the station. This way, even if a Blue Blood sect disciple came here one day, they wouldn't offend the Blue Blood sect. Although rogue cultivators had no one to rely on and lived a poor life, it was because of their own weakness that they developed a smooth and slick heart. Under normal circumstances, rogue cultivators only sought to survive and wouldn't casually offend cultivators from sects. Blue Blood sect's Divine Secret Hall had been abandoned for several decades, so Lu Ye's sudden appearance naturally surprised the rogue cultivators. A familiar tiger roar came from a certain direction and Lu Yi immediately turned around and rushed in that direction. A moment later, he saw the snow-white amber in the square. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.